Did I close the window? Supposed to be no sound.
Can you hear me?
Oh, it's breaking up. There we go.
Can you hear me now?
On a disk, floating through space, with a tiny sun.
I have no idea what's wrong with the sound here, but I'm barely getting there.
Hey, I'm FTFE. Welcome back to the channel that does to stupidity what the internet keeps doing to my stream, because I don't know, I guess the internet just hates me. Ross, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
There we go. Dodgy start to the stream there because my hamsters that power my internet, I don't know, they must have died or something. But we have joining back once again to the channel is Ross Thatcher, otherwise known as Flat Earth Jesus, otherwise known as Iron Horse for some reason. Why Iron Horse?
Why Iron Horse? Well, because Flat Earth Aussie Jesus was a little bit silly, and I tried to change it to my name Ross, and people didn't like FEAR. They preferred Feege over fear. So I thought, well, Flat Earth, FE means iron, so I just changed it to iron, and Ross means horse in ancient Teutonic, so it's literally what Ross means is horse. So Iron Horse just seems to be
perfectly
more appropriate.
you because it's batshit crazy.
Yeah.
Yes. So
almost as crazy as
just as
anyway.
crazy as what? Sorry.
Almost as crazy as Flat Earth.
Well, that's not crazy. That's just, you know, a sensible thing to do. Exactly. Fighting against misinformation and stupidity is a noble cause. Speaking of stupidity,
maybe you might learn to fight something sensible one day. Then,
like what's sensible that I should fight then? Other than the flat Earth.
Well, reality. If you really think we live on a spinning space ball, well, that's the insanity you should be fighting. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sure you've got your little spiel you wanted to start with.
So you think I should be fighting against the Earth being a globe?
Absolutely, yeah, that would be sensible.
But the Earth is a globe, so I mean that's what reality shows.
Well, that's a belief, but the evidence says otherwise.
Well, no, because see, this is the thing. All of the evidence says that the Earth's a globe. The thing is that you guys just say all the evidence isn't real.
Well,
so
flat Earthers wouldn't
if you
exist
dismiss all of the stuff that is real, then all that's left is the stuff that you guys think is for the flat Earth. But why do you think flat Earthers exist?
Well, every single one of us set out to prove the globe. We thought flat Earth was stupid. We thought this will be easy. We'll be done by dinner. And 6 months later, we're flat Earthers. Every single one of us started that way. It's just that you're a bit slower than the rest, obviously.
Do you think that maybe there's a chance that you're just not smart enough to debunk the flat Earth, and that's why you're a flat Earther? Well, because, you know, it took me approximately 33 seconds to debunk the flat Earth.
I 100% absolutely believed the globe most of my life. You know, 100%.
I never believed it.
My whole spirituality was based upon being on this particular special little blue ball a certain Goldilocks distance from the sun, hurtling around through a vacuum of space. You know, to me, that was my spiritual awareness of existence for most of my life. So to turn around and negate that was a huge leap for me to have to sort of, it physically hurt my brain to realize, hang on a second,
Was it like a
things
concussion
don't
or?
add up. We live on a stationary planet Earth and it's fixed at the bottom of the known universe. And that does really freaking hurt. You have to
Oh, and
rearrange
so
all your thoughts.
you went to the bottom of the universe and checked that, did you?
That's what we live on, as far as we know. We can dig down 8 miles. There might be more stuff underneath that, but we don't know. But as far as I'm concerned, the physical base, everything needs a base.
So what you're saying is you just believe that we're on the bottom of the universe because we've only dug 8 miles into the surface of the world we live on.
That's not the only reason. I'm just saying I don't know what's underneath it. But
well, I mean,
there's all the evidence
we had a
points
look
to
what's
the fact
underneath
that
the Earth, and
everything physical,
the
what
void
goes
of
up
space
comes down.
So let's have a look at what's underneath the Earth. Here's the Earth. I guess in this orientation, underneath would be the bottom of this picture, and well, there just appears to be a space full of 10 to the negative 17 torr pressure. So there's your question answered.
But it's not. That makes no sense. It's a nonsensical belief. We've never even seen water conforming to that amount of curvature. We have never seen land conforming to that amount of curvature. And to think that we could even exist within a vacuum of space is pure insanity.
Well, we do see the curvature all the time. We see the effects of it, most definitely.
We do not.
We do.
We see the effects of perspective, nothing more.
We see the effects of curvature exactly as predicted in our refractive atmosphere that we live in.
Well, and, since it was misinterpreted, perspective is misinterpreted as curvature, you might assume that it is, but upon further investigation, with all the modern technology we have available to us today,
the stuff that shows that it's curvature.
And it's not curvature. We can zoom in on boats far beyond where we thought we'd be able to before. We can see way much further than technically should if the Earth did actually conform to the curvature that you believe it should or does.
I mean, if you ignore the fact that we live in an atmosphere that has refractive conditions, then you may have a point. If we were to talk purely geometrical, but what we see is light. We don't see geometry. We see light, and that light has to travel a path. And that path that the light travels goes through a medium of varying density, which means that the light has refracted. So just saying we can see too far is ignoring the most important variable, which dictates what we can see.
So again, you've got to imagine something. You have to create excuses for why we can see so far, but that's not what refraction does. Refraction completely changes the angle of view of something, or it doesn't turn the atmosphere into a magic periscope to see beyond physical stuff that's in the way. Light does not go through physical stuff. If there's a mountain in the way, your vision finishes at the mountain. You don't see through the mountain. Curvature is an example of a mountain in the distance that you would not see through if it was actually there.
What it's doing, what the light is doing is it's traveling round a path that the atmosphere is making it bend around the curve of the Earth. And if the light is bending around the curve of the Earth, then that's what we see. We see that path of the light. And we see exactly what we expect. Hold on, let me finish. We see exactly what we expect to see with refraction on the Earth. We can even predict what we can see based on the temperature and pressure of the air. We know what refraction does. It's been quantified for centuries. The fact I'm wearing glasses is proof of our knowledge of refraction, and it does exactly what we say, and this has been shown by experimentation lots of times. You can look at the Skunk Bay time-lapse video and see that it can physically bring things above and then back below the beach of that Skunk Bay. And it's not physically changing, just the path the light has traveled is changing. That's what refraction does. It's what we expect. But what you want to do is remove refraction and, go to space and take a picture. There we go. We did it.
Okay. All that refraction could do, according to your description, is if it bent the light, then we would see a glow of light. It will not give us X-ray vision. And
what do you
mean? I don't know why you keep imagining
glow of light.
You can wear your glasses. Your glasses allow you to see through the wall
that are beyond the curve. It doesn't allow you to see through things. It allows you to see beyond them because the light is bending up around them.
Therefore, there's no curve. There can't be a curve.
Well, of course there is curve. Light has to bend around something. But that's what you need to do is remove the variables or account for the variables as best you can. And going to
but it
space
doesn't
and
give
actually
you
having a look
X-ray
is a
vision.
very,
It's as
very,
simple as
very
that.
good idea. And the only way that you guys can deny the evidence is by literally denying it, by going, no, it's fake, it's not real. But that means that there is evidence that you just
But you
don't
guys
want
say
to
the
accept.
Chicago skyline is a mirage. It's a mirage because it's 60 miles
It's
away.
refraction.
It's
It's
the only excuse you've got.
But no, here's the
refraction.
thing
It's
about
not.
the Chicago
You can see
skyline,
it,
though,
you can
Ross.
see it. It's as simple as that. Because there's
Okay,
nothing in the way.
Right, here's the thing about the Chicago skyline is that you can't see it most of the time. Most of the time it's not there. Only on very special circumstances is it there. So what does that say?
It's just excuses. You grapple for excuses because most of the time you can't see it because of atmospheric conditions.
Be fair, I just asked you a very simple question.
Underwater vision. You don't always have a great line of sight depending on the
I just
actual
asked you a very
conditions
simple
of the
question.
day.
What does it mean, the fact that it's not there most of the time? Most of the time, you cannot see it from that position. What does that tell us?
It means there's atmospheric obscurity because the atmosphere is
so
too thick.
The atmospheric
like
conditions, the medium that
you put more and more layers of plastic sheet onto a frame, it becomes less and less visible through, less opaque. The atmosphere is often like that, and under the right conditions, on a nice clear day, you will see a lot further. It's very simple.
So what you're saying is that change in atmospheric conditions can change the amount of the buildings that we can see. Is that right?
Well, it changes the clarity of them.
Well, no. Sometimes, Ross, when we see the Chicago skyline from that position, it's just the very peak of the buildings. Sometimes it's about 60% of the buildings. So why would it be different? Why would you be able to see a different amount of the buildings at different times?
Okay.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be able to see any of it at any time if the Earth is curved.
With refraction, you should.
In fact, you can see any at all, proves it's flat.
No, the refraction allows us to see that. But the fact that most of the time we can't see it, if the Earth was flat, then we should be able to see it all of the time.
You ever seen the Pink Floyd album cover with the prism of light going through it? That's refraction. When you look at a fish tank through the corner, you see one fish here and one fish there. There's only one fish in it. That's refraction. You see a straw and a glass of water bent two different ways.
Exactly. The straw is bent up towards you, isn't it?
The atmosphere is not like a solid glass of water. The water is the water. The atmosphere is just a very, very gentle gradient, and it's not going to change things that much that it's going to turn it into a magic periscope.
Actually, a gradient will change it more than just one change of medium. The fact that it's a gradient means that there is many instances of refraction happening. That angle of incidence is changing every time the gradient changes slightly. So as the pressure increases, the angle of incidence changes again. Then it increases again.
Okay.
The angle of incidence changes again and again. Hold on, let me finish. Right? And because the atmosphere is a gradient and because the Earth is curved, it will naturally make the light bend down around the curve of the Earth, allowing you to see further than you would if there was no atmosphere. This is exactly what we... hold on. If you say wrong, hold on, give me a chance. Give me a chance, Ross. I'm trying not to interrupt you, and so please give me a chance.
I know, but you're waffling on, mate. You're just waffling on with a bunch of rubbish. Let's just...
Let me finish my point. All right? If there was no atmosphere, then your point would be valid. But because there is an atmosphere, we have to take into account what the atmosphere would do. And we do take it into account. It's simple as that. So saying we can see too far is not a valid argument.
Fine. There might be a certain amount of refraction at times, but it's still not going to turn the atmosphere into a magic periscope. It never will. If your refraction, every example we see of it is light bending down, not bending up and over. You know, that's what you're saying that it's doing. You're saying it's bending up and over the curve. Yeah. It can't do that. It would just bend even further down into the curve and make it even less visible.
No, you're right. Light is bending down, right? The light is bending down, which is lifting the image up from our perspective because we are seeing where the path of light is going.
It makes no fucking sense, man.
Let me finish the sentence, then maybe I'll explain it to you. Because the path of light is bending down, what we see is that path of light, which means that the image for us will be brought up. It's simple.
But you just said it bends down.
Yes, the light bends down. So for us, when we're looking at it, if we're looking straight ahead, right, the light that we're looking at is being bent down.
That's called
down. We are seeing, when looking straight ahead, what is down. It is brought up for us.
So the curve that's in front of us and between us magically disappears and dips and flattens.
It raises up, yes.
So that this downward bending light can be seen through the curve that would block it even more if it existed.
That's exactly what refraction does.
Use your brain,
but that's what refraction does, and it's what we expect it to do.
No, that's what you've made an excuse to explain away why we do see much further than what we should.
No, it's no excuses. It's just what the atmosphere does.
You've got nothing else except to make up stories about refraction doing the opposite of what it would actually be doing.
Okay, right. So here's the thing. Our knowledge of refraction, right, is used in things like celestial navigation, okay? When we do celestial navigation and we take a reading with a sextant, we have to do certain things to that sextant. One is apply a dip correction, which, funnily enough, is based on the radius of the globe. The other thing is apply refraction corrections. Those refraction corrections are based on our knowledge of refraction doing what we say it does. And celestial navigation works to get you where you want to go, which therefore means that our knowledge of refraction is also correct.
Yeah, well, maybe what you're doing is adjusting for the fact you believe that there's a curve there and actually you are using a flat baseline, and all you're really adjusting for is your height above the water level, which would be different on every ship. And you call that a refraction index because you've got all sorts of excuses to try and still continue to believe your ancient superstitious beliefs that you live on a spinning ball hurtling through space.
Right, the thing that works
why
is just an excuse. That's what you're saying, Ross.
Why are we saying the same stars all the time, Craig?
What you're saying is the thing
that
works based on the globe. But what you're doing is saying the thing that works based on a globe is not true. Even though it works and it's based on the globe, it's not true. That's what you're saying. Like all navigation is based on the globe, and this is just factual.
It's not. All navigation is based on the fact that when your compass points towards the center of something, like the center of a circle, then it means
compass isn't the only way to navigate. In fact, compass isn't used that often for navigation.
Why are you speaking over me every time I open my mouth, but you tell me to hush every time you're trying to say something? You know, if you're going to be rude,
I thought you finished. Right. Anyway, the discussion is supposed to be about gravity, right? So, I think, Ross, right, and I am not trying to insult you when I say this, but I think you don't understand gravity, and that is the problem. Which is basically the problem with all flat earthers, is that they don't understand gravity, and that's why they have a problem with it. So, to show me that you do understand gravity, do you think you could steel man what we say gravity is?
Well, you say stupid things like bent space-time because you can't find any motion of the Earth, and so you have to invent relative motion, and then you say that is bendy space-time. And then you say it's attraction of mass, the original Newton's one, whereas you don't need any of those things to actually explain what gravity is and what it does. You know, things find their place of rest, as Newton describes them, by resistance. So the thing in motion will remain in motion unless something stops it, and that force of stopping is resistance or friction. And without that, you don't need gravity. It's just not necessary.
Yeah, so what I said is, do you think you could steel man the position that science and everyone else holds on gravity? Do you think you could explain what we say it is?
Yeah. You say, we don't know. Next question. That's what you say it is.
No, that's what
the top
Tyson says.
Nobody knows what gravity is. How can I steel man a fictional theory that nobody knows what it is?
We do. I've got a very good description of gravity. So I mean,
okay, well let's go ahead. You give me your description then, and
I'm asking you to steel if you can show that you understand gravity by steel manning the position of gravity.
Why would I steel man something that science itself doesn't know what it is?
We do know what it is.
You don't.
We've got a law of universal gravitational attraction, so we definitely know what gravity does and what gravity is. So whether we have an exact explanation for every single part of the mechanics is irrelevant. I would like you to steel man the position that we currently hold. If you can't, then you don't understand gravity, and that is the root of the problem.
You just said a universal theory of attraction. But nothing's attracted to oh, that's a pretty star. Let's go and wander around it for the next 50 million years or something. That's not a theory. Attraction isn't a theory. And then you have to invent even greater dark matter and dark energy, which means things unseen. So even more invisible, unseen, unproven forces to try and even support your unseen, unproven, invisible force in the first place. It's just insanity. No, I'm not going to steel man your insanity any further.
So basically you don't understand gravity, and that is the problem then?
Okay, well, you tell me. You educate me and convince me that I should believe in your theory of gravity.
Well, we know gravity's real because we use it in real world
We
applications
know.
every single
We know.
day.
That's it. That's your answer. We know it's real.
Did you
That's
listen
not
to
an
the
answer.
rest of
Tell
the
me
sentence?
what it is, Craig.
Did you listen to the rest of the sentence I said?
No, you just said we know. I don't
No,
want
I
to hear
said
we
more
know.
after
Just
that.
tell me
Did you
what
not?
you
I
know.
said literally straight after those words. I then said other things. Did you not hear what it was, or were you too busy interrupting?
Other things. So just
Yeah.
stuff and stuff. It's gotcha.
Well, I was in the middle of explaining what you asked me to, but you started talking,
Well,
which
okay then.
stopped me being able
I'll be
to.
quiet.
Yeah, that's how it works. So we use gravity in real world applications every single day, matching the predictions that we have of gravity, showing that it's real based on our current knowledge. We have
What is it?
you want to know what is gravity? Gravity is
Yes, Craig. That's the question.
Is the warping of space-time due to large masses' influence that changes the locality of objects.
Well, I thought an object at rest remained at rest unless acted upon by another force.
In Newtonian world, yes, we don't always have to live in a Newtonian
Well, what is
world.
this? What is space-time?
I said gravity.
Space-time is gravity.
No, I didn't.
I thought it was the warping of
gravity.
space-time.
I didn't say space.
So it's the warping of space-time. So space is nothing. Time is a man-made convention, just describing a different period of time between one.
Well, I didn't say space or time. I said space-time.
Warping two lots of nothing gives you something.
No. I didn't say space or time. I said space-time. One thing.
Yeah. So what is space-time?
The fabric of the universe.
Fabric of the universe. So I can feel it. I can feel space-time. And then I warp it.
A nice straw man attempt. Well, you do warp it. Yes, your mass warps space-time on a very small level. All mass does.
Right. So things gravitate towards me because of my mass warping space-time. Got it.
If there was a small enough mass and no other masses around, like the Earth, then they would. You do exert a very small pull yourself on the Earth.
Have you heard of diamagnetism?
Yeah, and that's nothing to do with gravity. So let's stay on topic.
Well, everything actually has a slight repellent force, not an attractive force. So I know it's got nothing to do with gravity because it also destroys gravity. Everything actually
really doesn't.
Nothing actually physically touches
two forces
according
can
to
exist at the same time.
Well, that's true because a magnetic force is 100 times stronger than a diamagnetic one, and it will easily override the.
Yeah. So a diamagnetic force, a magnetic force, and a force created by gravity can all exist at the same time, and there is a sum of forces.
Yeah, well, fine, that's fine, but I just don't see why you have to call gravity a force when it's not.
Well, gravity creates
gravity
a force.
basically
That's
just means
we can
weight.
measure. Weight is literally
we can measure weight.
described as mass times gravity. So I mean,
yeah, but mass is basically just the density of something times its volume, and that's also the weight. So mass is just sort of a mass is just a place filler word. It doesn't really mean anything, but you can have a weight of mass, you can have a density of mass, and you can have a volume of mass.
No, we know exactly what mass means. Mass is literally resistance to inertia.
Mass is resistance to inertia?
Yeah, that's literally the description of mass. It's a measure of
resistance to inertia. Oh, yeah. Well, I've heard it all now. I think you're just making shit up on the spot. Mass is resistance to inertia.
You can look it up yourself, but that's literally the mechanical definition of mass, resistance to inertia.
All right,
and we measure it in kilograms.
Oh, and pounds and
No, in kilograms. Resistance. Pounds is a measure of weight, not a measure of mass.
Well, kilogram is a measure of weight.
No, kilograms is a measure of mass, not weight.
Weight of the mass.
No. Kilograms is a measure of mass. Pounds is a measure of weight.
No, pounds is just a different system of measuring.
No, it's not just a different system
of measuring the weight
is a measure
of
weight, which is literally the mass times the gravitational acceleration.
So you overcomplicate everything. If you just made it nice and simple as we do, and we just go by what we observe, we don't have to say anything about the acceleration of things to give something weight, because usually when we weigh something, it's at rest. It's not accelerating anywhere, unless you're believing in the old flat Earth theory that we're shooting up at 9.81 meters a second or whatever. But No flat earther believes that. We just believe
Well,
that
Dell does.
mass has weight. Well, I'm not Dell. Yeah,
But you
all
just said
sorts
no
of people
flat
have all
earther
sorts of
believes
different
it,
beliefs.
but I
Let's
mean
just
that's
talk
wrong,
about
isn't it?
what
Because Dell
we're
does.
talking about here without bringing in too much, interference. The weight of a mass is determined by the density and the amount or the volume of it. That's it.
That's not what those
And
words
then
mean, though.
you can determine whether it goes up or down by how dense it is relative to its medium. That's all that really matters. We don't need a force of attraction to cause things to stick to the bottom of the earth or the sides of the earth or anything stupid nonsense that's never been observed, mind you. That's how
we've been to space and
understand
seen
the earth
it.
is flat.
So
we have a universal up and a universal down, and things find their place according to relative density. Very simple.
no, well, okay. First of all, we have seen it. We've been to space and we've seen it plenty. So and what you just did there was you redefined a bunch of words. None of those words mean what you were saying that they mean, right? Mass is resistance to inertia. Density is mass divided by volume. Weight is mass times gravity. Kilograms is a measure of mass, not weight. Pounds is a measure of weight, not mass. These are basic things that
that's crazy.
You learn at
pounds and kilograms
high school,
are exactly
probably
the
first
same
year
thing.
of high school, Ross.
Only
To be
they're
fair,
just a different standard.
No, it's not
They're
just a
both
different
units
standard.
of measurement of weight.
No, again, right. Here's the thing. Kilograms will change. Whatever the mass is will change based on your position of Earth.
What?
Did you not know that?
Say that again.
Your measure of your mass will change based on your position of Earth. You will weigh slightly more at the poles than you would at the equator.
See, this is all theoretical nonsense.
No, this has been tested. They've actually tested this.
If you took a standard weight, like a kilogram mass, and you calibrate your scale at the North Pole with that 1 kilogram mass, and then you weighed yourself, you will weigh exactly the same as if you moved all that stuff to the equator, calibrated your scale again, as you should do. You will still weigh exactly the same, give or take how much you've
but why do you have to calibrate your scales?
But other than that,
right? Right. There's a reason why when prospectors were like getting gold and stuff, they would only weigh their gold using balance scales, where they would weigh it against a set weight, mass that they would weigh it against. Whereas using like a spring-loaded measure of the mass would actually give you slightly different results based on where you were. So what they could do, wait, let me finish. So this was put in place to stop you buying gold further up north and then going south and selling it for more than you would up north, because that's what you would be able to do in reality. And this has been tested. This has been literally tested in real life. I'm not just saying these things. There are experiments that show this to be true.
No, but we recalibrate a scale virtually on a daily basis for people that might deal in very tiny amounts of things, or for doctors and chemists and so forth. That you recalibrate your scales regularly and often without even moving it an inch. This is a common practice in anything. If you're using that type of scale, if you're using a balanced scale, well, then your weight is already pre-calibrated, and so you don't have to do that. That's pretty common sense to me. Like atmospheric pressure is changing all the time, humidity, temperature. You've got so many variables, and of course, somewhere like the poles, well, the air is freezing, so that makes it a lot more dense. So you've got probably a lot more atmospheric pressure pushing on you in the first place, so you would appear to weigh more. There's so many other reasons apart from thinking you live on a spinning space ball that explain those things.
Again, I don't think I live on a spinning space ball. I don't know where you get that from. We live on a rotating oblate spheroid globe.
That's what the heliocentric globe model is. It's a spinning space ball.
No, it's not. That's a straw man of what we say. We live on a rotating oblate spheroid globe, not a spinning space ball.
Oh, come on. We've all been told if you shrink it down to the size of a billiard ball, it'll be more smooth than a professional grade snooker ball. So calling it oblate is a bit of a stretch of the imagination.
Well, it is an oblate spheroid. That's why they use Vicenti formula, which takes into account the slight oblateness of the Earth.
It's so insignificant, it's not even worth mentioning.
Well, it is for
according to your own beliefs.
I don't have a belief. You love to straw man, don't you?
You do.
No, I don't have a belief. Right. So anyway, I want to talk to you about how gravity is actually used in industry, and not just in industry, in military industry. Right. So
military, very important shit, radio.
Yeah. So billions and billions of dollars of research and stuff. Okay, you know what a submarine is, right? Yeah, you know what that is? A submarine.
Yes, I know what a submarine.
Good. You know what a submarine is, right?
Yes,
what's the main purpose of a submarine?
It's how the Germans found the passage under the Antarctic ice wall.
Yeah, never happened. So what's the purpose of a submarine?
To travel underwater.
Well, not just to travel underwater. There's a particular purpose for submarines, especially military ones.
Well, to destroy other ships with your big boom booms and stuff.
To stay stealthy. To be stealthy. To get places without being noticed.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Right? So there's a problem with that because everything about submarines is noisy. Navigation with sonars is noisy. If you use your sonar to look around, then other ships and other submarines will know where you are. So the British military used gravity to solve that problem.
Gravity.
Yeah, they use gravity. So the gravity of the Earth is mapped regularly. Whether you believe it or not, it's mapped regularly from satellites in space, and variations in mass, so if there's an underwater mountain or not, etc., will give slight different readings for gravity, right? So these are mapped all the time, and then these submarines have these mappings. Now what these submarines also have is an array of very, very, very sensitive accelerometers, which can detect variations in mass around that submarine, and in real time map the underwater floor of the ocean and the underwater mountains around them in real time, using the difference in acceleration that the mass is causing on the accelerometers. They compare those real-time readings with the gravity maps that are taken in the satellites from space to navigate underwater, staying silent using gravity. This is called gravity gradient navigation. And in recent times, they used an extremely accurate version which took into account quantum effects and was about 1,000 times more accurate. So this is something that has been done for about 20 years and is extremely well understood technology used by the British, American, and Australian militaries, and is based purely on our knowledge of gravity. So if gravity isn't real, how do these work?
Well, it's a cool story, bro. I say it's just probably density and pressure.
How would it tell of a different density of something that's nowhere near it?
The depth of the water will have a different pressure. So
it's not detecting the water.
I don't know
detecting
enough
the things
about
around
it to comment on it. But if you say it's gravity, then so they're using warp space time to map the Earth.
Yes.
Underwater.
Yes.
Right.
Because
yeah. Cool story.
More masses have more warp space time more. So if there's an underwater mountain, which means there's more mass between the submarine and the center of the Earth than if there wasn't an underwater mountain, it would have a larger gravitational effect because there will be a larger warping of space-time. And using this knowledge, they have developed a new method of navigation that is actually used. It is used today. It's being used right now in the world.
But haven't you often said to me before that there's less gravity at the top of a mountain, but underwater mountains have more gravity now? That's a really interesting story.
When so it changes depending on the density of the medium you're in.
Yeah.
When have I said there's less gravity at the top of a mountain?
Hey?
When have I said there's less gravity at the top of a mountain? I've never said that.
Plenty of times we've spoken in the past. You've always said that.
I've said there's less air pressure at the top of a mountain. I've said there's less air pressure. I've not said there's less gravity.
Well, you have, because you say we're further away from the center of mass.
Yeah, but you're not. But you have more mass underneath you. So the fact that there's more mass underneath you is also going into the calculation, which makes there more gravity. If you were at that height, but there was no mountain, then there would be less gravity. But because there's a mountain there, there's still more gravity because there's more mass.
The story seems to be always changing, you know. Like
the story that's never changed. You just don't understand it, which is what I said earlier. Is the problem?
It's always my lack of understanding that.
Clearly, yes, you weren't able to
say I don't understand something. I pay attention to when you say things like no, there's less gravity at the top of a mountain because you're further away from the center of
But
gravity.
I didn't say
but
there's
when you're
less gravity
underwater,
at the top of a
mountains
mountain.
have more gravity.
I've never said that there's less gravity at the top of a mountain.
Okay, well, maybe it was somebody else, but I've heard it plenty of times on behalf of your fellow globetards who believe there is less gravity at the top of a mountain because you're further away from the center of gravity.
If you are on top of a mountain, you have to take into account the mass of the mountain in the calculation of the gravity.
Well, that's what I argued previously, and you told me no, because you're further.
No, I would never say no because that's my position.
Oh well. Moving on, I still don't think that there's any attraction of mass.
Well, again, so explain how submarine gravity gradient navigation happens if there's no attraction between mass.
I don't know.
What are those enclosed gravimeters? Those accelerometers, what are they detecting and how are they detecting it?
I would say it's the change of pressure because if the pressure
they're not
of the
able
mountain
to
on
pressure,
the water is more dense than the pressure of the water,
yeah,
then that's what it's measuring.
They're in an enclosed, vacuum-sealed environment. There's no way they can detect pressure. And they certainly couldn't detect the pressure of something that is, say, 500 meters away from it. But these accelerometers can. There is no mechanism to transfer the difference in density over that distance to be picked up at such accurate measurements.
Okay, that's fine. I got no problem with that. It can still work on a flat Earth.
Flat Earth's irrelevant here. We're talking gravity. And this shows that gravity is not only real, but 100% matches our predictions.
Yeah, but look, you can predict all sorts of things without it necessarily being the reason why you say it's doing a thing. It's no different from Eratosthenes making his prediction. If he makes his prediction about the circumference of the size of the globe, then he can do his experiment to prove that. But if he actually set out to prove that we had a nearby local sun on a flat Earth, and his experiment would prove exactly that. So it just depends on your preconceived biases as to what you want to believe, as to what's the actual cause and what's happening. But it doesn't mean that that's the actual.
There's no biases involved here. Science involves making a prediction based on a hypothesis, and that prediction and hypothesis and experiments that come after have allowed us to develop this technology, which can render submarines practically invisible to everything at this stage. So the fact that this technology is used needs an explanation if gravity isn't real, because it matches everything we say about gravity 100%. There is no other explanation for what is happening other than it is gravity.
The first thing you do in science is make your observation, and so then if your theories fit that observation, you can call it whatever you like. If you want to call it gravity, that's fine. I've got no problem with that.
Okay, you can change the name of it if you want. You can call it whatever you want, but it's still the effect that we call gravity, and it shows that is real. So you admit that gravity, or whatever you want to call it, is real?
I admit that all the observable laws of physics are real, absolutely. I just don't believe that it's attraction of mass that can cause us to live on a globe and cause giant warships to cling to the sides of oceans or the bottom of oceans. I just think all that stuff is absolutely nonsense.
But that knowledge behaves
as though it's on the top surface at all times. Everything behaves as if it's sitting on the top of a flat and level surface, especially at sea. All planes fly on a flat and level. They never adjust for curvature. Nothing ever adjusts for curvature.
Yes,
so why would you even believe in it? You just have to have gravity, this attraction of mass, to make the impossible possible. We don't need that. We can just make all our laws of physics on what we actually observe, just as all engineers do, all Navy warships, all friggin' airplanes, everything.
Okay, but your laws of physics do not explain gravity gradient submarine navigation, which is a real thing. And if it can't explain it, then it doesn't work. But my physics, actual physics, hold on, I just let you speak for ages. Real physics, physics that I went to learn at university, physics that everyone that has ever studied understands, knows that it can work and does work based on our understanding of gravity. So what you did there was you accepted that gravity, that could be an attraction at this little level, but that can't be responsible for Earth being a globe and ships sticking to the side, blah, 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 except ships being on the side of the Earth, being held there by gravity, matches the same predictions that were used to create gravity gradient navigation for submarines. So yes, it does say that it can do that. It matches our predictions. It matches our model. And we have all of the images from space, which also match it up, that you have to just say are fake, because Otherwise, your argument is destroyed. Your biases hold you back from admitting any picture from space ever is real.
It's not a bias.
It is.
Well, it is. It's a detection of bullshit that says yes, they are fake. You can see they're fake. Everything about them is fake. We've seen how they fake them. It's been proven. It's been documented.
It's never been
exposed.
proven.
We know it's all fake. Heaps of NASA spokespeople have come forward saying they've never been to space.
No one from NASA has ever said that.
They fake everything. They fake everything. It's been
no one from NASA has ever said. No one from NASA has ever said that.
They've never been to space. They never have. They never will.
Ross, there is nobody from NASA that has ever said that. You just lied.
There's been dozens of them.
No, there hasn't. There's been none.
There's been plenty.
There's been nobody that works for NASA that has come out and said that space is fake. Your fingers in your ears and
go la la la, and they don't do that.
Ross, there is nobody. There is nobody, right? There was one video of two people that said that they worked for NASA, right? Turns out, no, they didn't. One of the women was literally just the wife of a janitor, and the other guy made a music track for them once. Yet on his bio on Amazon, he wrote a whole thing about him being a part of the NASA team working at the South Pole.
I think that was his
right?
name. Take that up with the guy who proposed
there is no NASA employees that have come forward and say that it's all a lie and everything's fake. That's just not true.
Why did his bio say that he did work for NASA?
Because he wrote his own bio.
Right.
That's why you can write
anything. So you can just write whatever you
bio.
Like in your own bio, can you?
Yes, yes, you can.
Okay. Like Professor Dave is not a professor.
Well, he's actually a professor because he taught at a university, which is the literal American definition of a professor.
Well, he actually did it illegally because he wasn't qualified.
So no, he did do it. He did it legally because he was a teacher's assistant. So.
Yeah, well, that doesn't make you a professor then if you're an assistant.
Technically, if
teacher's aide.
If you teach the class, you are. Then you went then that was just the first time. Then you went on to teach physics and you actually did it at a proper college as the actual lead person teaching, which makes him an actual professor according to America. So again, just maybe research a little bit because
I've researched quite a bit and I've seen him be exposed quite
he's never
through his own words, no less, mind you. He's dropped out multiple times. Turns out he hates chemistry. He's made multiple confessions. A lot of people have put collations of them together.
He said that he dropped out of college twice, but he's also then finished college courses.
Yeah, sure. It's a good story.
Yeah.
Cool story. Yeah. Still don't make him a professor.
I mean, the fact that he taught at college makes it...
As far as I'm concerned, when it comes to gravity, Newton just had it basically covered. An object... what is it? So Newton everything at rest remains at rest unless another force acts upon it. And then the thing reacts to that force. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So things don't drop until the force is placed on them to pick them up in the first place.
What did Newton say about gravity, though?
Well, these are his laws of physics. That's what I'm just saying. There's a very basic thing we all learned in high school. An object at rest remains at rest unless acted upon by another force. So
Ross,
why is it at rest? Because it's resisted by something dense enough to resist it.
Ross, listen to the question, dude. What did Newton specifically say about gravity?
I wasn't there. I didn't hear him. I forget.
Well, you would have learned this in school.
I think he turned around and said that it's a ridiculous notion from memory. The last thing I read about him saying that it's impossible to think that anything could be attracted on the basis of mass attracting mass.
Right. Again,
I'm pretty certain those are his words.
What was the law that he created for gravity?
I don't know what his law he created for gravity. I'm just telling you the laws of physics.
I thought you said you understood. I thought you said you understood gravity.
Remains at rest unless acted upon by another force.
Yeah,
an object
gravity
in
creates a
motion
force.
will remain in motion unless acted upon by another force, and that force is resistance. So it stays at rest due to resistance from the mass.
So gravity makes a force. Yeah, you're right. So anyway, you said that you understood gravity, so you must know what Newton's law of universal gravitation and attraction says.
Well, I don't, because I don't believe that there is a universal force.
But you said you
of
understand
attraction.
gravity. Were you lying when you said that?
I'm telling you, I understand physics, the simple, observable, everyday, observable laws of physics that everybody lives and works and plays in every day. It's simple sort of stuff. You don't have to overly complicate things with theories.
But earlier on,
theories of attraction.
Don't change the subject, Ross. You specifically said that you understand gravity. Those were your words.
Well, yeah, I understand gravity because it means weight. And weight means density of the mass times the volume of the mass.
Something else, not actual gravity then?
There is no actual gravity.
But there is. Newton said there was.
It's an unnecessary extraneous force that is not necessary in all observable.
It is 100% necessary when you're calculating things in engineering.
Yeah, maybe if you're calculating things, but then what is it? It's not bent space-time at all. It's just straight drop down to 9.8 meters per second squared. So it's a measurement of distance over time, not warped space-time. It's direct straight down.
The newtons of force on that an object is creating downwards due to gravity.
Well, that's still
that force changes based on the
position
on Earth as well, because the acceleration also changes based on your position on Earth as well.
It's meaningless. Just because things change at different places doesn't mean that.
Well, it changes based on our predictions of how and where it should change as well.
Well, that also coincides with being warmer and colder.
I said, the problem is that you don't understand gravity, right? So what Newton said about gravity is this. Newton said that gravity creates a force that is proportional to the product of two or more masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between the masses' centers. That's what Newton said. That was the law of universal gravitational attraction that Newton came up with. It's just an observation written down mathematically. Right. These things happen based on, and this is how to describe it. Newton also said that please don't ascribe a theory of gravity to me, because the fact that my maths describes an instantaneous force doesn't really sit easy with me. It's what I observed, but I don't really like it. He never had a theory of gravity. That was the problem. He just had an observation which he wrote down as law.
Yeah,
and that observation works, and that law works at non-relativistic situations. If you start traveling really fast or including very large masses, that law isn't as accurate anymore, and you start needing to use Einstein's calculations to remain accurate enough.
Yeah, but that's then assuming that you are actually traveling, because, as Einstein specifically said, that there is no optical experiments whatsoever that can prove any motion of the Earth. And so that's why you have to invent a special theory of relativity to assume that because the other things are moving,
you missed out a large portion of that sentence. But why did you miss out the rest of that sentence, though? You missed out the large bit of that sentence that is important, where he actually said that there's no optical experiment at the time that can detect the motion of the Earth. What was the rest of it?
Despite
no. After the motion of the Earth, what are the words that come after that?
Well, then he expresses an opinion.
No, right. All right. So you seem to be cherry picking the quote. What Einstein actually said was the motion of the Earth. Hold on. What Einstein actually said. What Einstein actually said. Ross, hold on. What Einstein actually said was the motion of the Earth around the sun. That's it. That's what he said. That he thinks there's no optical experiment, i.e., there's no interferometer type experiment that could detect the motion of the Earth around the sun, because we're in that reference frame. That's it. But there's lots of other things that you can do to show that there is motion of the Earth. You don't have to use the confines of relativity and specifically the motion of light to detect Earth's motion around the sun. We can do it in many other ways. Stellar parallax is a very simple way. And we can also detect the motion of the Earth around its own axis using other methods, because Einstein wasn't talking about that. So we absolutely can detect the motion of the Earth, just not the motion of the Earth around the sun using specific means that Einstein was talking about in that quote that you just cherry-picked half of.
Well, no, because he precluded that with a big, an even longer spiel about the Michelson-Morley experiment, saying that there is no evidence to prove motion of the Earth, even though the Foucault's pendulum had been known for decades prior to that.
Motion of the Earth around the sun. The Foucault's pendulum was nothing to do with the motion of the Earth around the sun.
Oh, that's just the rotation.
That was to do with the motion around the Earth around its own axis. And Einstein never had any problems saying there was a way to detect the motion of the Earth around its own axis. The only thing he said was experiments like the Michelson-Morley experiment, interferometer type experiments, would not be able to detect the motion of the Earth around the sun because we are already in that reference frame. But detecting the motion of the Earth around its own axis, no problem at all. In fact,
so a tiny
detecting the motion of the Earth around its own axis is so easy that
if the Earth is spinning at one rotation every 24 hours, that means that every hour it has to turn 15 degrees. And if the gyroscope is mounted anywhere on Earth, it's going to drift. In today's 21st century navigation systems, they're using what's called a ring laser gyroscope. It is extremely precise.
We've all seen this, Craig.
If we could simply get one of these ring laser gyroscopes, we would be able to prove once and for all that there is no rotation to the Earth. One of the people in the community actually purchased one for $20,000. But what we found is when we turned on that gyroscope, we found that we were picking up a drift.
How much of a drift, Bob?
A 15 degree per hour drift.
Thanks, Bob. So that was the optical experiment that Einstein was talking about. Foucault's pendulum is not an optical experiment. An optical experiment is something that's like an interferometer. That's what he means by like an optical experiment, by using the movement of light to be able to figure out what you're doing. And Foucault's pendulum is not an optical experiment and is not used for detecting the motion of the Earth around the Sun, only the motion of the Earth around its own axis, which is also what Bob detected with that machinery, showing that it matches Foucault's pendulum and that there is clearly rotation of the Earth around its own axis at 15 degrees per hour.
And is this equatorial degrees, or do the degrees change at different latitudes?
No, the entire Earth is rotating at 15 degrees per hour.
Right. And the entire sky, similarly, according to the theory of relativity, could be the one rotating at 15 degrees per hour while the Earth is stationary. They're both as active as one another.
It could be if you are just looking at it, but an interferometer like that has no way of detecting the movement of the star, and neither does Foucault's pendulum. So using either Foucault's pendulum or the experiment that Bob there used disproves the notion that it is the stars that are moving, and backs up the notion that it is the Earth that is the thing that is rotating, because neither of those experiments would have any way of detecting the movement of the stars.
Rightio. Let's grant you this 15 degree per hour drift, which is now rotation, not drift. Yes. So it's rotation. How come then the 65 times faster speed, orbital speed, is not detected? It's 65 times greater than the 25,000 mile per hour day spin.
Because that equipment isn't able to pick that up. We are already in the reference frame of the orbital plane, so we couldn't also pick up that orbital plane.
That makes no sense. It makes no sense. If the speed exists, then it would be more detectable just because you're in a reference frame.
So the Earth moves at 15 degrees per hour.
Aren't we already in that reference frame?
Right.
How come one works and one doesn't?
No, because we're tilted against it and we can measure against the actual movement of the Earth around its own axis. But that's 15 degrees per hour, right? How many degrees per hour do you think the Earth moves around the Sun?
Well, it doesn't move in degrees per hour around the Sun. It moves almost a degree per day, according
to which would be 1/24th of a degree per hour, which would be
but it's still 1.6 million miles. It's still 1.6 million miles. You know, like we can measure distance in a car. That's tangential
velocity.
We can measure distance in all sorts of things. Why can't we measure distance in space?
There's actually no intrinsic way to measure velocity.
Because it doesn't exist. That's right.
Yeah, but you can measure motion relative to another thing. Right?
Yeah, that's right. And so if we're seeing the motion of the stars drifting around at 15 degrees per hour, that's what we're measuring.
But again, there's no way for a interferometric gyroscope or a Foucault's pendulum to be able to detect the stars moving. There's just no way that they could do that. There's no mechanism for that movement to transfer to a pendulum moving a different amount based on its latitude.
So how did Michelson and Morley fail then to detect the motion but a flat Earth?
Well, they didn't fail to detect the motion because they weren't actually trying to detect the motion of the Earth. They were trying to detect the relative motion of the Earth to the ether, which they assumed existed. But what they found was there was no relative motion of the Earth to the ether because the ether didn't exist.
Gotcha.
They weren't trying to measure, what the Earth was moving relative to anything else. They were just trying to show whether there was a movement of the Earth relative to the ether that it existed in. They expected to show that the movement
isn't the interferometer would exactly change what a ring laser gyro is?
As they move through the ether, the position and direction of the light that they were firing, either whether it was perpendicular or parallel to the direction of the movement, should change the speed of the light. There should be a difference in the speed, but they found that the only difference that there was within the margin of error of the machine, which in that case was 15 times less what they would have expected if the ether existed. But what Mike and Morley couldn't do was discount the movement of the Earth around the sun if there was no ether. All it did was show that the ether didn't exist, or that the ether did exist but moved with the Earth, which made absolutely no sense because it would make the Earth the source of the ether. But then you compare it to all other observations and all other experiments, and when you put all of the information together, you get a globe orbiting the sun in space, rotating around its own axis.
Yeah, cool story, Craig. Cool story.
No stories,
the
just
interferometer is exactly the same instrument as what the ring laser gyro is, and I don't see why a flat earther would successfully prove motion while these brilliant scientists...
This had been done before. Accurate. This had been done loads of times before. Bob just did something we'd already done, just more publicly.
Yeah, well, as far as I'm concerned, the mechanical gyro never does that. Yeah, that's what they use
incorrect. Absolutely 100% incorrect. So, after Bob and his cohorts did that experiment... Sorry, one sec. What they did was, they went, that could be picking up the ether or, some kind of unicorn farts or the heavenly energies or something. So they contacted a flat earther that was an engineer called Stephen P. And they said, Stephen, right, we don't think using the fiber optic gyro was a good idea because we can't discount all the influence of, God sneezing or whatever. So could you build us a mechanical gyro from scratch? And we can then prove to these idiot globers that there is no rotation to the Earth. So Stephen P. built this glorious... Right. Here it is. So this was built by Stephen P. at the behest of Bob and all his friends. So he's talking about it at the beginning and who he is and what he built. So this was what they built, the mechanical gyroscope. And when Stefan started testing it and started recording it, he found that it measured a drift that matches the previous predictions of 15 degrees. And he tested it in all different orientations, locking it in certain positions, using different RPMs, different speed up, every different way he tested it. Turns out that this mechanical gyro, because it was so precise, way more precise than just a normal one you could get, every single time picked up the exact amount of drift that we would expect it to give if the Earth was rotating. Amazing. And when he went to Bob with this, Bob went, well, you're not allowed to show that to anyone. And then when Stefan put this up, he tried to sue Stefan, got one of his YouTube channels deleted, but luckily a lot of people then uploaded it anyway. And the evidence is here, but Bob, of course, never told anyone about it. But the evidence exists. Not only did Bob use the mechanical gyroscope, but he also used the fiber optic gyroscope to show exactly the same thing, that the Earth rotates at 15 degrees per hour.
But you know what's interesting about that? It's just a second or a minute ago, you said something about godly energies, didn't you? Which is quite interesting when you think about it, because heliocentrism itself is all about saying that the sun is God, and therefore by putting it in the middle and all the planets going around it.
No, we don't think the sun's God.
Basic nuts and bolts of what heliocentrism's origins are all about. Because originally, everyone they did believe... No, come on, don't talk over me, please. Originally, when they did believe the Earth was spherical, they still believed it was geocentric. Heliocentrism was when Copernicus put the sun in the middle, when the Pope encouraged him to do it because he tried to argue against it. No, it's true. It's quite true.
Yeah, ancient history, though. It's not what we
think now. On the stationary plane of Earth that we live upon, we could still then think of the sun as the giver of life, the giver of light. So therefore, it's still God, but it's just that we're not going around it. And so
we don't think it's God,
godly energy measuring 15 degrees per hour, because that's exactly how fast the sun goes around on the stationary plane of Earth. 15 degrees per hour.
We don't think that there's a God, though. So,
this godly energy. Thank you.
Well, that's what Bob thought, but that was just an excuse for what the fiber optic gyro was picking up.
But I thought he said something like heavenly energies, but
Yeah, something like that. Unicorn farts or some such.
The stars actually do move that slight little bit faster than the sun. That's what the sidereal day is all about. The stars go to 23 hours, 56 minutes and change, whereas the sun goes precisely 24 hours. And that's one way I can hold your feet to the fire. Maybe you can answer this one.
We're not changing the subject right now. We're still talking about the gyroscopes. Why do we not have to adjust the clock? We're not changing the subject right now. We're still talking about the gyroscopes and how
we're still talking about time and drift and everything. If we're going around the sun and we're going a degree around the sun every day, Craig, just let me ask
let's stick to the gyroscopes before we change the conversation. Right? I haven't finished talking about the gyroscopes.
This is the same conversation. We're still talking about time and drift.
Well, no, I want to talk specifically about the gyroscopes.
Around the sun per day.
I haven't finished talking about the gyroscopes.
Need to be adjusted by 4 minutes per day.
So I haven't finished talking about the gyroscopes, though.
Well, I agreed with you. They've got that 15 degree per hour drift.
Right, so they do pick up the motion of the Earth, then?
Well, they would pick up the motion of something. The sun.
Of the thing they're physically attached to. Yeah.
Well, maybe the sun has such powerful forces that that's what creates everything.
But it also picks it up
around
at night.
The way it does.
It also picks it up at night, so...
Picked up what?
It also picks up the same drift at night when the sun isn't there.
Yeah, but the sun's still moving the whole time.
Nowhere near it, though. And you're just saying, it could be this, with absolutely zero evidence, so the claim can be instantly dismissed.
Okay, then. So if we are going around the sun, then why don't we adjust our clocks every day by 4 minutes?
Because we do it every 6 months instead, by an hour.
No, we don't. It's just daylight savings time.
Yeah,
it's just daylight savings time. But if we use the sundial,
to account for the 4 minutes a day. Yeah, we don't do it every day because we do it every 6 months.
That's rubbish. You don't even know what daylight savings is done for.
Yeah. So, the days start getting darker and darker, earlier and earlier because of that 4 minute difference, right?
No, it's not. That's not the reason why. The reason why is because of your tilt. And in our version,
and that 4 minute difference in
the
sidereal day to an actual day, yes, right? That's why it starts getting darker and darker every day because of that 4 minute difference. Are you just going to overtalk me every
your own model?
I really do. So that 4 minutes every day. No, are you just going to keep over talking me every time I speak?
That's half an hour a week, mate. Yeah, it's not 1 hour every 6 months. So it's half an hour a week.
Yeah, but that's why we do daylight savings. Are you going to overtalk me every time I speak?
Okay, finish your statement, then I'll tell you why you're wrong.
Right, so be quiet. That's why we do daylight savings, because it gets darker and darker by like 4 minutes a day, which is why later in the year it gets darker and darker, earlier and earlier. So then we do daylight savings, so there is more light in the day. That's why we do it. If we didn't do the daylight savings, then it would be darker really, 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 really earlier. And if we didn't do the change, then every 6 months it would be completely out.
It actually goes the opposite way. We actually make the days longer, put the hour later in the evening as the day's already getting longer. So our summer night times are actually later in the evening than it is in winter. And as the days are getting shorter, that's when they actually take the hour back off us, at least here in Australia. Maybe you probably do it differently, but they did it that way in Australia because they wanted to match what good old England used to be like. So they wanted to have longer summer days.
Maybe I'm wrong about the daylight savings.
You're totally wrong. You're totally wrong. You're wrong about it being the sidereal thing. It's not daylight savings per day later either. What you do, if you have a sundial and you measure midday by the shadow and you set your clock by that, then each day, either side of the equinoxes...
Right, let me just clarify, I was wrong about that, just so everyone knows that
heading towards the spring equinoxes, then the sun is rising 2 minutes earlier and setting 2 minutes later.
Stop talking for 1 second. Stop talking for 1 second.
No, let me finish my thing. Yeah, I'll let you finish how wrong you were.
You babble so much. Just give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second, okay? I want to clarify that I was wrong. Just give me a fucking second. Jesus.
I just did. Use it, for fuck's sake.
Right. Just want to clarify that I was wrong about the daylight savings thing there. I retract what I said about that, okay?
Good.
But the daylight savings thing is just politics.
Finish explaining about what you're saying is wrong also about the sidereal day.
But the sidereal day, the 4 minutes a day, that's... I mean, there's no problem with that. So tell me your actual problem with that. I may have missed your problem with that.
Yeah. We're talking length of daylight hours per day is the thing. We've still got exactly 24 hours in the day as measured by a mechanical clock. So you set your mechanical clock by the sundial. Then as we're heading towards winter, The sun rises 2 minutes later in the morning and it sets 2 minutes earlier in the evening. And when you're heading towards summer, it goes the other way. It rises 2 minutes later the next day and sets 2 minutes later.
Right. Okay.
Earlier, so it's still 24 hours in a day. But if we're drifting around the sun every day, then we're losing a degree or we're gaining a degree somewhere. So we couldn't be measuring with an exact 24-hour clock, which measures 360 degrees. We would be out by a degree per day, and we would have to adjust our clocks by 4 minutes per day to keep our clock accurate and to keep the sun overhead at midday.
Okay, right. So
that destroys the globe.
All right. You finished?
I'm finished.
Just want to clarify? Right, okay. No, it doesn't destroy the globe, actually matches the globe, right? So that 4 minutes... No. Are you finished? Are you going to be quiet and let me talk? Or are you going to interrupt every time I try and give an explanation? That's what I just want to know. Are you going to be quiet?
You can keep talking.
Right. Okay.
I can say no, you can keep talking.
So just be quiet whilst I give the explanation, all right? So if we were to alter the clock by 4 minutes every day, every 6 months... the night and day would switch, right? Because we have no. Again, like you're talking, I am explaining. Be quiet and listen whilst I am talking. Okay, I will let you know when I'm done. Okay, so if we change,
that's not how conversations normally go. Normally, people just talk back.
Yeah, but you keep interrupting me when I am trying to explain. So don't
interrupt. You're wrong. Why should I let you speak if I...
Do not interrupt when I am trying to explain.
To not correct you.
Give me a chance to finish what I am saying before you say I am wrong.
It would change every 6 months if it didn't.
Give me a chance to finish before you say that I am wrong. Please do not talk until I have finished talking. Please.
I'll just ask
that. No, I'm asking you nicely, Ross. I'm asking you nicely.
Go ahead and
please do not talk until I have finished. Okay? Right, no thank you. So, if we were to adjust our clocks every day by that 4 minutes, then every 6 months, we would then be 12 hours out. Because we don't adjust, that means that every 6 months, we are still have the right time compared to which way we are facing compared to the sun. If we didn't, then night and day would switch every 6 months compared to what we had on our clock. But that 4 minutes adds up to half a day over 6 months.
It's completely incorrect.
No, 4 minutes that's exactly how it is.
4 minutes per day times 7 days a week. That's 28 minutes per week. The sun that would be out of synchronization with the Earth, because if the Earth is spinning 360 degrees, like the clock, the physical mechanical clock, it only measures 360 degrees.
What's it spinning 360
but if the Earth is going 360 and a bit, or it's going 359, then the clock would be out of synchronization with the Earth. That is what part of it is facing the sun. You know, if the clock is always, the 12 is always at the top of a clock, then if you go on a clock's going around the sun, the 12 is only pointing towards the sun once per year. Every other time it's going to be out by about 4 minutes per day, unless you adjusted the clock to point back so that midday was happening at solar midday. It's just a simple, basic mechanical problem that destroys the globe for those who can understand it. So many people can't understand it because it's a little bit too tricky for them to comprehend that 360 degrees is 360 degrees, not 361 or not 359, it's 360.
So
which is 4 minutes a day.
Right. The Earth rotates 360 degrees in 23 hours and 56 minutes. All right? That's how long it takes to do one rotation around its own axis. Okay?
Fine.
And that is relative to...
Can I stop you there?
No, you can't stop me there. I'm talking. Don't interrupt. Right?
Fine.
So that is relative to distant stars. Okay? The Earth takes 24 hours to rotate relative to the sun. But at the same time, the Earth is moving a degree every day. So that 4 minutes and that 1 degree over 6 months match the clock being in the right position. If we were to adjust the clock by that 4 minutes to match the rotation of the Earth 360 degrees every day, after 6 months, what is midnight would be midday, and what is midday would be midnight. But it's not, because we let that 4 minutes go for the sidereal day.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm done.
Doesn't not match a mechanical clock.
It does, 100%.
You've just no. The only way it could work is if it's the sun itself acting as the hour hand of the 24-hour clock, and then it always returns exactly overhead every 24 hours. Now, the morning and evening times change daily, but if it was the Earth going around the sun and the clock is measuring 360 degrees per 24 hours. You're saying it's measuring 23 hours, 56 minutes and 4 seconds, but the clock measures 24 hours in 360 degrees. So therefore,
no,
the sun
it doesn't.
is in the center and the Earth is going around the sun.
Right, hold on, no, you're wrong there.
Degree, I haven't finished. And if the Earth is a degree different per day going around the sun, then the mechanical clock will not match solar time. It will be out by 4 minutes daily, and day and night will swap according to the mechanical clock every 6 months without the 4-minute daily adjustment.
So, no, 360 degrees is not 24 hours. That's the problem.
It is. A clock says 360 degrees, 24 hours.
Yeah,
you can't
but
deny the clock.
The 360 degrees of the Earth is not 24 hours.
But the clock.
But yeah, that's why. Right, if it was 24 hours, then
it is.
No, if the rotation of the Earth around its own axis was 24 hours, then that would mean that we wouldn't need that sidereal day. But it's not.
The sidereal day is start time.
The sidereal day is the fact that the Earth rotates in 360 degrees. It takes 23 hours, 56 minutes and 4 seconds, right? And that's roughly 4 minutes different each day. And that's why the days start to change as the seasons go. And because Earth's tilt stays relative to the sun, and as the Earth goes around the sun, if that 4 minutes we adjusted for each day, when we got to the other side, then that 4 minutes would switch what is midnight and midday for the positions on Earth. It would be sunny at midnight and it would be nighttime at midday. But because of that 4 minutes difference and the sun's relative position and its tilt towards the Earth's tilt towards the sun, that 4 minutes every day means that those positions don't swap. It matches what we say.
That's what would happen if you didn't adjust the 4 minutes per day.
No, it's what happened. Yeah, if we didn't, it wouldn't do that. But we don't adjust it, so it does do that.
You also try to bring in daylight savings, adding 1 hour.
Yeah, okay, I admit I was wrong about that. We can move on.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got no idea of your own model. That's the whole problem. Most globals don't have much of an idea of their own model because if the clock says 360 degrees in 24 hours, the clock says 360 degrees in 24 hours. You cannot deny 360 degrees in 24 hours. The clock proves the globe is wrong.
No, that's why the days change, even though like the clock stays 24 hours. If the 24 hours, if it matched what the sun and the rotation of the Earth was doing, then we wouldn't have seasons. The sun's position would be exactly the same time every single day, but it's not. It changes.
No, but the sun. Okay, so the seasons are easily explained then on our model, since you
they're not. You don't have any explanation for how or why the sun moves, so there is no explanation for that.
Well, we don't know how or why, but we can see what it does. So, and what we do see is that it goes around the equator, and it goes around the equator twice a year on the equinoxes. And as it spirals upwards, as it gets higher and higher, it appears to make a smaller and smaller circle. And we see that through the firmament above us. Whether you believe in that or not is irrelevant. What we see is it making a smaller circle because it's getting higher. And as things get further away, it appears to get smaller. And that's what creates the seasons, because the direct sunlight now is making a smaller circle, which is then on the inner side of the equator, the northern side. And so that's when they have their local summer, and the indirect light coming to the outside creates our winter. So then as it gets lower again, and then it passes the equator and the next equinox, and then it starts creating the summer seasons in the southern side, and then the indirect light shining into the north creates their winter. It's pretty straightforward stuff, but the size of the circuit the entire time doesn't change. It still takes exactly 15 degrees per hour, 24 hours per day, exactly as we measure with a clock and observe with a sundial. It worked beautifully on the flat Earth model. It doesn't work for the globe because the globe needs to adjust the clock to make it work. And the sidereal day that you're talking about, the 23 hours, 56 minutes, 4 seconds, is actually the motion of the stars themselves. They are also rotating around Polaris, just as the sun is doing, but the sun does it at the equator. The stars inside the equator are more easy to observe them doing this. And because they go those 4 minutes per day faster, after about 30 days or so, we notice that the sun seems to be rising in a different constellation, which is a house of the zodiac. So they divide that into 12ths, which gives us our months and therefore our years. And that way we see the sun and the zoo dial rotating around, and eventually they'll match up to each other again, and that turns out to be about 365 and a quarter rotations of the sun, which is hence why after 4 years we put in an extra day into the calendar to make sure our solstices and equinoxes always fall on the same day. It works for the flat Earth.
Except it doesn't, because there's no explanation for how or why any of it happens. And also, it doesn't work because there's no map to apply it to. So there is that.
There is the azimuth or equidistant map.
No, that's not an accurate map,
it's a
because
time
your
and
country doesn't
longitude
look
calculator.
like that. Again,
it matches all observations.
No, it doesn't match all observations because your country doesn't look like that.
You don't know that.
I do. I know what your country looks like. It doesn't look like that.
Well, I don't know what my country looks like. I live on it, but I've never seen it look
the
like
truckers
Australia.
have driven across it, and it does not look like that.
I just have to take the cartographer's words for what they say it looks like.
You could go and check it, and truckers check it every day. Your country does not look like that.
Truckers do not check it every day.
Yes, they do.
From A to B. Nobody sees the country looking like that. We go from place to place. We've really got no idea.
Truckers measure how far they go, east to west and north to south. Your country does not look like that. Right.
There's not.
Now, I want to clear this up
about
how wrong you are about the night and day thing, right? So, the Earth rotates around its own axis approximately once every 24 hours, which defines our day and night. The rotation is what causes the sun to appear to rise and set. In addition to rotating on its own axis, the Earth orbits the sun once every year. This orbit is responsible for changing seasons. Now, consider these points. When it's midnight at a particular location, the Earth is positioned so that this location is turned away from the sun. 6 months later, the Earth has moved to the opposite side of its orbit around the sun. However, due to its daily rotation, the same location will again be turned away from the sun at midnight. The key is that the Earth is continually rotating, so even though the Earth is on the opposite side of the sun 6 months later, the rotation of the Earth ensures that midnight, when the sun is on the opposite side of the Earth in the given location, and midday, when the sun is roughly aligned with a given location, remain consistent relative to the sun, due to the fact that there is a sidereal day and 4 minutes extra during that 1 degree movement around the sun. To visualize this, think of a spinning top, the Earth with a light shining on it. As the top moves around the light, one point the top will face towards the light and then away from the light in a consistent cycle regardless of where the top is in its path around the light. That's something I wrote for a script and a video I've got coming up, and I've got graphics to go along with it, and it explains exactly what we say and how it is, and whether you accept it or not, that is the answer.
Belief.
No belief. That's how it works. Again, we don't need beliefs. We've been to space and seen it.
You're still ignoring the fact that if it's rotating 360 degrees per day as we measure by a clock, then
we don't measure the Earth's rotation by a clock.
It is out by that 4 minutes per day, and unless you adjust the clock,
we don't measure Earth's rotation by a clock.
The same clock time.
We do not measure Earth's rotation by a clock.
No, that's how we measure a day, and a day is one rotation of the Earth, is it not?
Yes.
There you go. So we do measure it by a clock.
Well, no, we don't. No. One rotation of the Earth is not a day. One rotation of the Earth is 23 hours and 56 minutes and 4 seconds. That's what one rotation of the Earth is.
Then why do we measure a clock in 24 hours, 360 degrees?
Because that measures a day, not a sidereal day. What 24 hours is. 24 hours is how long the Earth takes to go back towards its facing relative to the sun. But remember, in that 24 hours, it's also moved 1 degree. Earth's rotation, 360 degrees of Earth's rotation is 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4 seconds.
It doesn't add up.
It adds up perfectly. Do the maths.
No, it makes far more sense if you're calling that the star motion. The star's moving as a singular
Well,
body
we measured it. It's not the star motion.
hemisphere.
It's the Earth's motion. Here's Stephen P. measuring it for you right now.
Well, again, that doesn't prove the Earth's motion because the Earth...
It absolutely does show that the Earth's rotation. This is exactly what we expect from the Earth's rotation. There's no other explanation for what this is happening.
Well, there is, because we've got, there could be plenty of other explanations. You're just jumping to
like what?
preconceived
Give me one explanation.
Because you want to believe that. As I said, the whole drift of everything above us, if Earth is sitting still and everything else is drifting, then that creates an energetic force that certain things.
Why can't we
may well
measure
get
this
to.
energetic force? If there was an energetic force, we'd be able to measure it. We can't. There is no energetic force coming from the stars.
You don't know that. And
we do.
Plus,
we can't measure it.
It's more likely the sun.
We can't. What kind of force would it be? Electromagnetic?
Possibly.
Well, we can measure those. There's nothing.
I would say possibly whatever force that actually keeps the sun itself in motion could be what we're measuring. I don't know what that force is. None of us do. Well, yeah, just like gravity. It's magic.
Gravity's not magic. Gravity is empirical fact.
Well, it is.
No, it's not.
Well, it's not. It's a belief.
It's natural.
It's a theory.
Order of the universe.
It's not a good theory.
Gravity is not a theory.
It is a theory.
No, gravity is not a theory. Is music a theory?
There is a theory of music, yes.
So is music a theory?
Technically, yeah.
Is driving a theory?
There's also practical music and the theory of music. So, there's both.
So does that not say something about, gravity? Maybe there's just the theory of gravity, but then there's also other things about gravity. Maybe the theory of gravity is just the explanation, just like the theory of music is just the explanation of music.
Yeah, look, that's not a problem. I've got no problem with that.
It seems to be a problem because you just said gravity's a
still
theory,
can be
like you're a fucking
simplified.
idiot.
It can still be simplified by the fact that relative density describes all the physics that we need to know and use.
But relative density
The reason why, like, you had your
force
idiots
to
in the
make
chat
those
asking
things
me before,
happen.
why does a feather fall in a vacuum? And it's simple, because a vacuum is zero resistance. In air, you have some amount of resistance because air has some amount of density.
So why does it go down and not up then?
And if you put it on water, it does go up.
Right. So why in a vacuum chamber? Right. So why? Right. Let's put a feather in a vacuum chamber. Why does it go down and not up?
Because there's nothing to resist it from going down. But
there's nothing to resist it from going up either.
The vacuum chamber floor will resist it because that's just where the base is.
But Ross, there's nothing to resist it from
Everything
going up.
rests on a base, Craig. Everything rests on a base.
There's nothing to resist it from going up. So why does it go down and not up?
Because there's a universal up and down. And unless there's resistance, a thing will stay in motion until another thing resists it.
So what you're doing there is just replacing gravity with a universal up and down. You're just saying gravity by another name.
Well, yeah, exactly. You can say that, but I'm not saying that it's a force causing it. The force comes from the density of the feather itself and the lack of something resisting it.
All physicists in the world
means
just laugh
that there
at you
is
because
not
density
enough
isn't
of a force of resistance to prevent it from dropping.
Right.
So it's reacting to the action that lifted it in the first place, Craig.
All physicists in the world just laughed at you because density isn't a force.
Well, it can be considered as a force.
No, it can't be considered as a force.
It can, because
you
have to have a resistance.
Every physicist in the world disagrees with you. Density
Newton
cannot be considered a force.
An object in motion remains in motion unless another force acts against it. The force of resistance comes from density of the medium, whether it be the ground, the bottom of the vacuum chamber, the water, the air, whatever that medium is. That's the force
density
of resistance.
Does not make a force.
And that's the other force reacting against something that stops it from moving.
Density
Otherwise,
is
it will
not
stay
a
in
force.
motion perpetually.
Again, density
Everything will keep on dropping forever
unless
unless something stops it.
Density is not a force. No matter how much you say it, density is not a force. Density is just mass over volume. That's it.
Why does this pen not fall through the table?
Because of electrostatics.
Electrostatics.
Yeah.
It's not because of the density of the table.
No, because actually most of that table's empty space.
So you say. To me, it feels pretty solid.
Yeah, but if you actually looked at it closer, if you looked at it a lot closer, you would find out that it's mostly empty space, and it's just the interactions between the electrons that are stopping your pencil going through the desk.
So the density of the table, basically. No,
it's the electrons. Yes. I just said that.
Yeah, but that's what creates the density.
All right, so hold on. Right, let's use that against you. So this spoon is pretty solid steel, and my table is kind of pretty undense MDF, right? So
I thought you said it's basically empty space.
Right,
make up your mind.
Right, I just said. Did you not hear me? I said we're working with what you just said. Space? I just said we're working with your logic, so give me a second because this is your logic, right? This spoon is extremely dense. It's good solid steel compared to my desk, which is pretty cheap MDF, More dense, less dense. Oh, wait. My spoon's not falling through my desk. Weird.
So do you understand, Craig?
It's weird,
there
huh?
are three basic principles in
So what you're saying
matter.
is it's not
we've
density.
We've got gas, we've got liquids, and we've got solids. Solids are called
so what
solids
you're saying,
because
Ross?
they're solid,
What you're saying, Ross, is it's not
and they have more
density.
resistance.
So it's not density then.
Well, it is because it's more dense than the air. It will fall through the air.
But it's not. It's also more dense than the table, and it's not going through the table.
But relative to the table, it's not dense enough. If you fired it out of a barrel
more dense than the table
at high speed, it would go through your table. But you know, a solid is a solid. That's by definition a force of resistance, because that's why it's called a solid. You know,
so what we're saying is, Ross, is it's not just the density, right?
It's not just the density; it's the relative density.
What we're saying is the density is just a variable, right?
The relative density.
No. Listen to the words that I just said. Listen to the words that I just said. What we're saying is that the density is just one of the variables, correct?
If you're talking solids, yes, that's a variable, yeah.
No,
but usually the
just density in general. Density is just one of the variables. You need to understand this, Ross.
Yeah.
Good, well done.
The medium of the table is dense enough to resist it. Whereas water is not dense enough to resist your spoon, but it's probably dense enough to resist your table. So it's the relative density of something.
Weird that I can get a massive boat, like a warship, to float on water when steel's way more dense than the water, huh?
I can explain that one for you. This is an easy one.
Crazy.
So you've got a kilogram.
And here's the thing. And hold on. I haven't finished. And here's another thing: that about a third of that boat is also under the water. Crazy.
Mm-hmm. So do you want me to answer that one for you?
It's almost like there's a force acting on it or something, which is creating a reactionary force from the water. It's amazing.
Yeah. Relative density. You can take a lead ball. Let's make it nice and simple
how some of it is underwater.
Are you finished?
No, relative density does not explain how some of it is underwater and some isn't.
Yes, it does.
No, it
doesn't.
Yes,
it does.
No,
now, let me explain it for you, because you're quite simple on this, and for your listeners,
what you're going to do is say some dumb things now, which I'm going to use in your next episode of Flerfs.
Let's take a 1 kilogram lead ball. We place it into water. It sinks to the bottom. Okay, we retrieve that lead ball. We take it out. We beat and roll it flat. We shape it into a boat. We've now made a container of air. And because it has a greater volume, its relative density to the water is far less, and it will still displace its own weight of water. But
thanks to gravity. If you say weight, then you're agreeing with gravity. Let's get that clear.
Shush, I haven't finished, Craig.
I know. I just want to make clear that you're using gravity there.
Rude.
I just want to make clear that you're using gravity
there. But the lead ball is the same density as it always was. The container of the ship is as dense as it always was. It's the same weight that it always was, but now it floats. That's because the relative density, because you've increased the volume sufficiently to make it a container of air, and it will displace its own weight of water, but it will float. And you can prove
why would it displace its own
simply by replacing the density.
You're now
of
repeating
the
yourself. You literally said this. You're saying the same things that you've already said. So why would it displace its own weight?
Archimedes' principle.
And Archimedes' principle includes what?
Includes the volume of the object.
Does it include buoyancy?
Well, of course, it describes buoyancy.
Yeah. And what's in the formula for buoyancy? That would be gravity.
No. If you're measuring it, if you're measuring it for engineering purposes, you might use the downward force of 9.81 meters per second squared if you wanted to, but that's not a force. It's just an observation of the rate.
No, it's an acceleration. You're right, it's not a force, that's an acceleration, Ross. Force is the measure in newtons.
It's an observation of the rate of things dropping in the medium of air. That's all it is. It's an observation.
Yeah,
and that's all buoyancy is the observation.
Due to gravity. Due to gravity.
It's the same weight of lead and the same amount of it, but the volume. Its volume has changed.
That acceleration changes where you are on Earth.
An empty balloon drops to the ground, but you inflate a balloon, it walks to the ground because relative density has changed.
Again, that acceleration changes where you are based on Earth, matching the predictions of gravity.
Oh, God. So what? What's that got to do with anything if it changes by tiny little increments? It's irrelevant.
No, it's not. It matches the predictions of gravity. It changes by the amount gravity says it should change.
What, because of the centripetal force or centrifugal force? Or
because of the centrifugal force and because of the distance in the center to the center of mass. The difference
it could just be the relative density of the air surrounding it. It could be anything. So insignificant, it's irrelevant. It's not even worth mentioning. Look, if I take an empty balloon,
because it makes a difference.
We take an empty balloon, Craig. An empty balloon, if you drop it, it falls to the ground, right? You inflate it and you tie a knot into it. What's it do? It wafts to the ground. It's still the same balloon. It's still got the same mass, the same amount of rubber or latex or whatever it's made out of. But because its volume has increased and it's now 99% air, it has more buoyancy in air because its relative density has changed from when it was just an empty balloon. Say what?
Buoyancy, which is a result of gravity, of course.
But it's the same balloon as when it was empty. It's actually got more volume.
You changed the force. What you did was you changed the variables, and now the gravitational force is creating a buoyant force.
Yeah, relative density.
No, buoyancy. Density is just one of the variables.
The density of the air is what's given the buoyant force. Right. Because now,
why does the density tower go sideways?
Less dense than
why does the density tower go sideways in the centrifuge?
Say again.
Why does the density tower go sideways in the centrifuge?
I don't know enough about density towers and centrifuges. I've never heard that one before. But
you know what a density tower is, right?
I do know what a density tower is. Absolutely.
You put one in the centrifuge and you spin it, and the density tower goes sideways with the denser thing, aligned sideways rather than up and down. Because we have changed the direction of the prevalent force. There is now a greater acceleration acting outwards from the center of the spinning motion of the centrifuge that is in than there is due to the acceleration due to gravity pulling down. So now we've changed the direction of the force, meaning the density tower is in a different direction. If it was literally due to just density, then there wouldn't be a reason it would be now going sideways. The density
because let
me finish. The density arrangements are due to the force created by gravity. There's no reason for density to arrange itself without a force to create that arrangement. That force is created by gravity.
No, you've changed it altogether. You've just told me there's no longer gravity. It's the centripetal force pushing it outwards.
I didn't say there wasn't gravity anymore. I didn't say there wasn't gravity anymore. I didn't say there wasn't gravity anymore. You lied about what I said because I didn't say there wasn't gravity anymore. What I said was now the prevailing force is from the centrifugal acceleration because that's stronger than the force created by gravity pulling down because it's going faster.
So you've overcome gravity.
Yes.
So gravity's now become irrelevant in this example and saying it's a different force pushing it outwards.
Showing that there has to be a force to create that density tower.
The force is the resistance, Craig. Listen carefully. It's the resistance.
Resistance can't push down to create a density tower.
Container of your density tower.
There is no resistance creating density towers.
And the more dense material is going to get pushed out further because it's more dense, and that will then push the less dense stuff further towards the center because
there's a force pushing them out. Yes,
so you've
correct.
Created a density tower based on density.
Because there's a force pushing out, creating. Ross, no, because there's a force pushing out, creating that density tower.
You're a horribly rude person.
You have overtalked me way more than
me when I'm trying to answer your question.
You have overtalked me way more than I have overtalked you, so do not get on your high horse.
At least I stopped when I asked.
You don't.
I don't keep doing it.
No, you don't. You have been way worse than me. I let you ramble for fucking ages, and I get 2 seconds in, and you overtalk me. All right? So let me finish my point, and then you can continue. Okay? What you have done with the centrifuge is you have created a force pushing outwards. That force pushing outwards is what is aligning the density in that certain order.
Yeah.
If there is no centrifuge, then the main force is the force created by gravity pulling towards the center of the Earth. And now that is the thing that is arranging the density. One force or the other. It shows, when you put it in a centrifuge, that there has to be a force applied to arrange the density.
No, it shows again that the force is resistance. And that resistance comes from density, from the density of the container, which is a solid, compared to the relative density of the liquids, which arrange themselves according to their own density, according to the forces acting upon it, which in the centrifuge is pushing it
There we go. There we go. The forces acting upon it.
The container, yeah. And so when it's standing upright and left to its own devices, then its
gravity is the force acting upon it.
Sort themselves by themselves. Just like if they did the opposite and they put it in the vomit comet, so everything's in free fall, in the motion of free fall, the resistance comes from the top of the container. So the more dense stuff will get forced towards the top of the container first, then the less dense to the less dense. And as soon as it comes to rest again on the bottom,
it just mixes up.
Because then the resistance force comes from the
bottom.
All right,
stop waffling. Stop waffling. Stop waffling. Stop waffling. No. You just said
question, Craig. It's not waffling.
You just said it yourself,
You're such a rude person. If you tell me I'm waffling when I'm actually answering the question, it's just fucking rude, mate.
Ross,
you're a horrible
You're
rude.
Waffling, right? You just said it yourself. The force acting upon it. That is the important part. The force acting upon it decides the direction. The force acting upon it decides the direction of the density tower.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the more dense always goes to the most dense, which is the resistance
because of the force acting upon it. Yes.
That's right, which comes from density.
No, the force acting upon the density. You can't have density acting upon the density. There is a force acting upon the different densities. The force, in the case of it just sitting there, comes from gravity. The force in the case of a centrifuge comes from the centrifugal acceleration of the mass creating a force. The force.
If that force.
Stop. I'm talking. Stop. I'm talking. Stop.
I'm asking you a question now.
I haven't finished what I'm saying.
If the force is gravity,
I haven't finished what I'm saying. Hold on.
If the force is gravity, then why in free?
I haven't finished what I'm saying. I haven't finished what I'm saying. I haven't finished what I'm saying. Right. So you have to have a force to arrange the density in a certain direction in the centrifuge. The force comes from the fact that it's spinning. Centrifugal acceleration on the mass equals force. And then it arranges the density, the densest outwards, the least dense inwards, because of the force pushing it out. If it's just sitting there, then it arranges the densest at the bottom, the least dense at the top, the same.
You've said
because
this.
The same.
We'll get to the point.
The same because there is a force acting downwards on it. The force in this case created by the acceleration due to gravity. Simple. A force dictates the direction, not density.
Okay, you've proven you're very simple. Why then, when it is in free fall, such as in the vomit comet, it's not in zero gravity, it is in free fall. Why does the most dense then go to the top if it's got the same gravity acting on everything?
In free fall, it mixes up. In free fall, it just mixes up. Do you want me to get the video and show you?
If you give it sufficient time, it will arrange itself the most.
No, it doesn't. It just mixes up.
That's where the resistance is coming from.
There's no evidence that happens.
Is the force. We've just proven resistance is the force, and it is based on the relative density of the different liquids inside of the density tower.
Okay, so here we go.
I've seen the video. Yeah, show everybody. Show everybody how wrong you can be.
Well, what we're showing now is that you're wrong, because there is no density arranging in the way that you said. Okay, so right, here we go. So this is before they go into 0G. Right, you can see it arranged. And then as they go into 0G, you see it. Right, and now, well, I don't know why they've cut it like that. But that's what it looks like when they're in 0G. Because you see he's holding on, people in the background are floating. When they're in 0G, it's mixed up like this. So not 0G, when the prevailing force is due to gravity, it's mixed. It's in a order. But then 0G, when they're cancelling out the acceleration due to gravity, there is no order. It just mixed up. That's it. And you can see.
Yeah, you have to give it sufficient time to separate.
You can see that he's sitting there. It's not separating. Not at all. Right. still a bit later on.
Not the greatest example of a density tower, but yeah, it's sufficient for the sakes of the experiment.
So there we go, pre-drop. So on the left, they've got wet. Oh, wait, let me pause it there so we can see.
Well, quite often when people do this, I don't know if you ever worked as a bartender, but often when you want to pour into different density, you have to do it quite carefully.
On the left here, we've got before they go into 0G. On the middle, they've got during 0G. On the right, they've got just after they drop out of 0G, and you can see the tower is starting to arrange itself again, which shows that you're wrong. In 0G, it doesn't arrange backwards, it just mixes up.
Well, it would if you're given sufficient time.
Have you got any evidence of that?
Well, no, of course not. Because
so we can ignore that comment then because there's no evidence.
And again, it's not 0G. I don't know why you're saying it is 0G when it's obviously not.
Well, that's what it is. It's a 0G vomit comet.
It's not. It's free fall.
Yeah, which is 0G. Free fall is 0G.
No, it's not. It's G. It's full G.
No, 0G is when there is no gravitational force.
You're just dropping at the same speed as the plane, creating the illusion or the simulation of weightlessness. It's a simulator. It's not weightlessness. It's insanity to believe it is. It's full G.
It actually is. Wait, you're in a plane that drops out of the sky.
Yeah, exactly. Drops.
Yeah,
drops.
So you are in free fall. So for your reference, you have 0G.
It just means free fall with the plane. It's the illusion of 0G. It's a simulation of it. It's the closest they can get to it, but it's not 0G. There's no such thing as 0G because everything will always have density.
All right. It's not exactly 0G.
The plane suddenly stops.
It's technically referred to. All right, hold on. It's technically referred to as microgravity, but it's basically 0G. It's simulating zero gravity. It is a zero gravity flight. That's
doesn't
the point
matter
of
what you call it. Doesn't matter what you call it. It is what it is. It's full G. 100% G.
Well, except you've cancelled out the acceleration due to gravity, so there's 0G. That's the point.
No, you are accelerating due to gravity.
Yeah, so from your reference frame, the acceleration's cancelled out. Right?
If you want to believe that. But that's the same as saying when you're sitting on a train, you're not moving at all. When, obviously the train is moving, so you are moving.
Yeah. Like, but this is literally what Einstein was on about.
The train is staying still around you, you're not moving.
This is literally what Einstein was talking about, like with relativity. That being in free fall is indifferentiable. You can't tell the difference between being in free fall and being in 0G. They are the same.
Actually, you can. If you watch the people in the plane, a lot of them are behaving like it's a crazy amusement ride, like it's the most insane.
Well, it's
thing
going to be
possible.
turbulence and stuff. That's obviously not perfect.
And when you compare it then to the actors sitting in the studio on cables thinking that they're in the ISS, they're perfectly calm and not reacting to anything whatsoever, and they're going 10 times the rate of a speeding bullet. So you can't tell me that.
Yeah, again, it's not perfect. It's turbulence, but the idea is that within your reference frame, there is no acceleration due to gravity. All right. So for you inside that plane, like, things aren't accelerating towards the ground, right? But obviously that entire plane is accelerating towards the ground. But for you, for your reference frame in that plane, there is no gravity. There is no anything.
You can convince yourself that. Absolutely. You can convince yourself that.
And that's what relativity says. That it's indistinguishable. There's no way to tell the difference. Right? But anyway, it certainly doesn't go against gravity because that matches all the predictions of gravity, and we just showed that you were wrong about the density tower. So,
well, how come
you remember when earlier, Ross? You remember earlier when I admitted I was wrong about the time zones thing? Do you think you could be a man right now and admit that you were wrong about the density tower?
I could, but I'm just still about to ask you one more question before I can conclude that I might have been wrong. Is then why they're not, if it's still falling at the same rate as it was previously, but now it's no longer having resistance because everything is free falling at the same time, then why still isn't the more dense mass still collecting towards the bottom? Why does it have to come to rest before it does that?
Because when you are in free fall, you're cancelling out that acceleration due to gravity for your reference frame.
So, in other words, because everything's falling at the same rate.
Yes,
which means that
because you're falling at the rate that gravity makes everything fall. Yeah, because you're falling at the rate that gravity makes everything accelerate. That means that within your reference frame, there is no acceleration between you and other things around you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
But do you think Do you think that density tower would still work if they didn't have a lid on it as they're falling, or do you think all the liquid would?
Well, all the liquid would probably just mix around it within that space.
So it wouldn't come out the top of the thing if it didn't have a lid on top, would it?
If there was zero turbulence, then probably not. But, there's going to be turbulence and stuff in there. So, who knows? But what it shows is that it mixed around. It didn't settle in any direction when it was falling.
That's right.
You said that when they were in free fall, it switched around. Can you admit that you were wrong about that?
I will admit
Come on, Ross.
That didn't show evidence of what I suspected would happen, but the centrifugal force that you talked about before shows pretty much the same thing. It's just gone sideways. The resistance is still coming from the end base where the most dense stuff gets pushed towards. So given a sufficient amount of time, the density tower probably would rearrange itself backwards
again. So
in free fall.
When you've got centrifugal acceleration, you've got an acceleration. When you're in free fall, relative to you and the density tower, there is no acceleration. So no acceleration, no force being applied, it mixes up. But acceleration, hold on, let me finish my thought. When there is acceleration, when there is a force applied, that's when you get the arrangement of the density tower. Only when there is a force applied to start the arrangement in the first place.
But free fall itself is allegedly 9.81 meters per second squared until you reach terminal velocity, correct? So that itself is supposedly the force of gravity, which should still be working on the acceleration the whole time. And so it should still be working on the same dense material. So there's no reason why the density tower shouldn't work exactly as it does when it's at rest, in accordance with the theory of gravity. But if we call it the theory of resistance, so the resistance comes from a solid at rest. Once they have resistance, then the more dense thing resists the less dense thing, which pushes the less dense thing higher and higher. And that's how you get a density tower. Once you've got rest, you get resistance.
All right. I'm going to bring the Rumpus in to have a chat with you as well. That's okay?
No worries. I can't stay for too much longer, but...
All right, Rumpus. I'm sending to the administrator email.
At least I got the gardening done this morning. That was the main thing.
Well, it's been too wet for any gardening here.
Wet for gardening?
Yeah, it's been far too wet for gardening. Not Scotland, Scottish wet. Scottish wet is just bad. Right, so... one thing I really wanted you to do was to prove to me that you understood gravity so that you were able to debunk it. But I still hold to the fact that you don't understand gravity, which is why you go against it, because you just don't understand it. You haven't a clue what gravity predicts.
You can't disprove a negative. You can't disprove a negative. So
what are you on about?
What's there
I didn't ask you to disprove anything.
I don't have to understand nonsense in order to debunk nonsense. I can just say it's nonsense and move on and say what is more logical, what's more observable.
Well, no, you have to understand the thing you are trying to debunk to be able to debunk it. You can't just say it's nonsense if you don't understand it.
But I understand it sufficiently, as I obviously showed you by talking about bent space-time and laws of attraction, all that sort of stuff. I've proven that I understand sufficiently to say that I think it's a load of crap because we don't need it. It's extraneous to our observations.
The universal gravitational law.
You could call it a law, but it doesn't mean that laws are necessarily right just because they're laws.
There's
a lot of unjust laws. There's a lot of unjust laws out there.
Oh, dude, there's a different. Oh.
And it might be the English
don't conflate scientific laws with judicial laws, okay? Rumpus, how you doing?
Same word.
You there, Rumpus?
Not getting away, Rumpus.
Audio from you. Your mic's on, but you're just not talking. Maybe you've not got the right one selected.
Bit like a globe brain. The lights are on, but no one's home.
Have you any idea how many flat earthers have failed to connect to a video call with me? Probably hundreds.
Probably most of them because they want to. You're a horrible person.
I'm not a horrible person. I am a lovely person.
Most of the time, you're actually really horrible. Every time I try to speak, you speak over me, and every time I try to interject a little bit in you,
well, that's
I'm
because
I'm speaking, and then just waste so much time
because you don't let me finish what I'm saying, and you overtalk me 95% of the time, and then complain that I overtalk you when you do it more to me than I do to you.
When people are having a conversation, it's quite normal that you don't just waffle on for minutes and minutes before the other person responds to something you
waffle on for minutes and minutes.
You go backwards and forwards. You just go backwards and forwards. That's normal conversation.
Ross, this is exactly what you do. You waffle for ages and get really upset if I try to interject.
Not all the time.
Yes.
Not all the time.
You're way worse than me, and it's incredible you can't see it.
No, I'm not. No, well, that's just your perspective. You can't see it through my eyes.
Rumpus, are you there?
My wizard powers are preventing him from coming in, eh?
You shall not pass. Well, whilst Rumpus tries to connect.
So I gotta get my staff as well. Maybe that will help.
I believe that you've got a staff, honestly.
Yeah. They work for free. I just have to take them for a walk every day.
Oh. Oh no.
Oh no.
All right. Globe Explained gave me a €50 super chat, but it accidentally got deleted. What you said. I don't think I can restore the message. So if you just message me, Globe Explained, I will read out what you said. Thank you. Christopher Kane did not mean to delete that. It was an accident. Right, Rumpus, you there? Well, Rumpus,
and by the way, you're giving me 50% of your super chats too. Did you know that?
Yeah, sure. I just asked my wife because she's the manager.
Right,
yeah. Yeah. She said
she can send it directly to mine if you like.
Not to your girlfriend.
Well, fiance. As close as wife.
Oh, right. Okay. So Globe Explains. I'll read this now so I don't forget.
At least she's not an ogre.
For €50 says, I said, here you have a little something to pay for your psychotherapy. Thank you very much. Yeah, it certainly helps. And Emma's Scottish. I mean, ogres.
$1 million wouldn't be enough.
Yeah, for her. You're right. It wouldn't.
For either of you.
You there, Rumpus? You still having issues? Rumpus is.
Who is this Rumpus? Is he English or Scottish or something as well?
He's very English.
Very English? No.
TV says gravity can't be manipulated or varied to validate that it causes any effect in nature.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Hello, Rumpus. How are you?
Sorry about that.
That's all right. How are you doing, bud?
Hey, Rumpus, how you doing?
Hello. So I'm just coming in.
Yeah, TB, you can absolutely manipulate gravity. Just change the distance or the mass. That manipulates gravity. Boom, done. No worries. All right, Rumpus, I could see you in the chat shouting. Well, I could hear even though you're typing, I hear it as you shouting.
Sorry, yes, I'm having a buzz problem. For some reason, I seem to have done something dreadful to my. Come on, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, you sound fine to us.
I can hear you.
Okay, I've got some horrible buzz on my speaker.
Yes, he did call my wife an ogre, but I just ignore that because, he's never touched a woman in his life, so it doesn't really matter.
Oh, what's going on here?
Plus, my wife's hot as fuck.
You do realise I'm saying that?
What's
going on here?
Okay. Well, I guess everyone's got their own tastes. That's fine.
Oh, God. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Yep, we can hear you.
I've got some hot.
Well,
Sorry about this. I've got some horrible buzz and I can barely hear you.
Oh no.
Oh, this is just impossible for me to.
We've only got 2 minutes to go, too. Oh, well.
Oh God. Well, I've got this horrible buzz, but I'll try and get through it. Yes, hello, chappie, Australian chappie. You keep on talking about resistance, and you keep on talking about. Craig made the very valid point. Do you understand that density is just a scalar value. Do you know the difference between a scalar and a vector?
You call it a scale or something. I missed that.
No, scalar. There are two sorts of variables, properties in the world. There are things that have direction and things that don't. So things like temperature,
music, would you say?
We're talking about physics. We're talking about in physics here. So
yeah, music has a scale. Music has volume.
Do you accept that temperature doesn't have direction?
Well, technically, you say it's going up when it gets hotter.
Oh God!
No, that's just the value. That's the magnitude of it. It doesn't have a direction. Temperature doesn't go in a direction. It's a property of space.
Whereas I disagree. Actually, I disagree. I think hot air rises, so temperature does have a direction.
No, that's the movement of molecules. That's not the temperature. Temperature moves, but the property itself. Okay, let's try something like. Let's try and think of another scalar that might not confuse you. There are two sorts of variable properties in the world, in physics, in the world around you. One has a property, something called a scalar, which has a value, it's a magnitude. And then something else that has direction. So velocity, for instance, has a direction. You're going in a certain direction when you move somewhere. Density is an example of what's called a scalar. It has no direction. So when you keep on talking about relative density, then it has no meaning. It cannot be responsible for saying something goes from one place to another because it has no directional properties.
Well, but when you talk about, we've just explained that though with a density tower. We've just observed that the more dense will go to the bottom. That's the direction it tends towards, and then it resists the less dense stuff.
There's no resistance. What's this resistance thing you're talking about? That's just gibberish.
Well, that's the separation of the different densities that we see in a density tower.
Well, this is just waffle. You talk resistance. When you talk about resistance, that has to have a direction.
How's that waffle?
Something that is waffle because resistance is a force for a start.
Yeah.
So it has to have direction. So what's this resistance thing? What's this direction you're talking about? Resistance
has
to have a direction.
And water. Put oil and water in a glass, mix them up. What happens to the oil? It gets forced to the top by the more dense water below it. That's directional. That's resistance from the more dense thing.
Yes, and the property of density. Do you know how density is defined?
Something to do with the.
Oh my God! You don't know what density is, do you? Right, something so you don't know what density is.
Come on. Of course we do. It's so basic.
Tell me what it is then. How's it defined?
By the amount of mass per volume.
Ah, right. So there. So that mass divided by volume has no direction, does it? There's nothing in that equation you've just given me that has a direction. Whereas you're talking about things. So if you're saying that density is providing the directional, your claim is that density is providing a directional, initiating the directional movement of something, and the formula you've just given to me has no directional properties at all.
It does, because we're talking about relative density.
No.
Two different objects, oil and water.
No, density.
And relative to each other.
You've just given me the formula for density.
And that gives it direction.
You've just given me the formula for density, and there are no directional properties in it. It's just mass divided by volume. It's of course called a scalar.
One to another.
So I'll move. But given you've got to be quick about this, I'll move on quickly. The example that Craig gave to you of an object in a vacuum. You talked about a universal up and down, which means you're actually discarding anything to do with density, and you accept the property of there is what you call a universal up and down. And as Craig said, that's just another name for gravity, and therefore you've dismissed your relative density as a cause for the movement. You've then said there's this universal up and down, completely independent of your density argument. So you've now got two arguments as to why things move. You've got a universal up and down you described, and this density. So what's this universal up and down? Where does that come from, if it's not density?
It is. It's relative density.
No, you just said it's something else. No, hold on. You just said there's universal up and down, independent of density. So where does this universal up and down come from?
Where did I say independent of density? Without density, you've got nothing to compare it to.
Oh, right. So the density is the cause of this universal up and down.
Yeah.
Right. So in a vacuum, and I hold an object in the middle of a vacuum chamber, then I release it, there's the same density above the object as below it. Why is it going down?
Because that's where the resistance force always comes from.
Hold on. It's in a vacuum. There's no resistance force.
That's right. There's no resistance force.
Right. So why in a vacuum does it go down? Why in a vacuum does an object?
Because there's no resistance until you get to the base.
Yeah, so why has it gone down? What has initiated the movement? Given the fact the density, there's no medium there. So above the object, there's the same density, i.e. nothing, as below it. So why does it go down?
Okay. Well, what's holding it? What's holding it before you release it?
I'm holding on a string, and then I release the string.
String. And how do you release the string?
By cutting it.
But it's in a vacuum. How could you do that inside a vacuum?
I could do it electromagnetically. I could press a switch, and I could have it be held up by electromagnetism.
Right. Okay. So you've gone from a place of resistance to a place of no resistance until it hits the floor where it finds resistance.
No, why has it gone down?
Problem solved. Because you removed the resistance that was holding it. You had resistance. It's reacting
I had to exert a force. The electromagnet or string, whatever, was exerting a force, and the tension. Let's just stick with the string. It's a bit easier for your simple brain. So the string has got some tension. So the string has got some tension. That's exerting a force on the object. I then cut the string. Now the same density of the vacuum above and below the object exists. Why does it go down?
Because there's no resistance from the vacuum.
There's no resistance to going up either.
From the string.
There's no resistance to going up
because it has density and tensile strength.
There's no density above it either. There is no density in the vacuum above the object. The string isn't just hanging there in thin air either. The string has to be attached to something. It's all. Yes, it's one of the things. But I've cut it. It's irrelevant now. I've cut it. So now I want to know why it goes down rather than up. There has to be a force. Because you removed the resistance that was given by the string. But why is there a force down? For it to go downwards, there has to be a force downwards. What is causing that force? What object are you dropping again? Right, I've got a ball. Let's say I've got a ball on a string in a vacuum. Okay. The density of the ball is what is the force. So there's around the object, around that ball, is the same zero density medium, i.e. none. Why is it going down rather than up? Everything goes towards the base. That's why we live on Earth. Now, what's causing that? This cannot be caused by density, can it? Right, hold on. You've just said it goes down, but you've just accepted in a vacuum there is the same medium has the same density, i.e. zero, around it. So why is it chosen to go down rather than up? It doesn't choose. It's allowed to go down. No, it's not conscious. Okay, if you don't want to call it goes down, but it doesn't go up. Why does that happen? Because resistance comes from underneath. There's no resistance. But why? There has to be a force to cause it to go down. There has to be a force to accelerate it downwards. Where's that force coming from? If the density above the object is the same as the density below the object, in the medium, i.e. the vacuum, nothing. I keep trying to tell you, that's right. The vacuum has zero resistance, so it simply allows it to go down until it finds a place of resistance. Do you understand that for something to move, it's stationary. For something to move, there has to be a force exerted on. Do you understand that? Do you understand Newton's basic laws that if there's no forces acting on it, it will stay where it is? So when I cut the wire, the string to it, there has to be so it's still at the point of cutting it is perfectly still. So something has to cause it to move. There has to be a force to do that. Where is that force coming from? It comes from the potential energy you put into it when you put it up there and hang it from a string now you've invented in the first place. No, that's not true. So it is true. Let's suppose it's reacting to the force that you use to put it up there in the first place, and you've got zero resistance beneath it, so that's why it's going to drop until the place of the greatest resistance. Do you know what potential energy is? Potential energy, it's something that you put into something and like do you know the formula for potential energy? Like when you put a ball on a string, that ball has potential energy if you let go of the string. Yeah. What's the formula for potential energy? Who cares about what the formula is? I mean, fuck about the formula, man. Because that defines it mathematically. Because that defines it purely. Instead of you being able to use some waffle made-up term that you've heard, you clearly don't understand what it is. The formula doesn't describe why it does what it does. It's just describing what it does. No, it describes how much potential energy something's got. Okay, that's fine. That's great. You don't know that. Okay, so you've just made up. So when I asked you what the force was, you then suddenly changed your argument to say there's somehow this potential energy in it. No, but the potential energy can only exist. If you understood what potential energy is, you could only understand that potential energy is force times distance, which means there has to be a force acting on it. So you still haven't explained where the force comes from to give it potential energy. Okay. What does Newton say? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So what you've done is you've picked the ball up and you've put it up there in the first place, hanging on a string, giving it the potential to drop if you let go of the string. So you think it remembers where it came from?
I didn't say that.
Well, you're implying that you're implying that there's something about the memory. I had to pick it up. If I had to pick up the ball and put it on the string, you're saying it somehow remembers that it came from the ground and then we're going to fall back there. Is that what you're saying?
What? So do you think if I throw a ball in the air, it just remembers that it came from the ground? That's why.
Well, I'm asking you why you mentioned that where it came from. You said you had to pick it up from the ground to put it there. Why is that relevant to your argument?
Well, because if you left it on the ground, it wouldn't drop. It would stay there.
So you think it has got something to do with where it came from? So you're saying if I pick up a ball from so you think to explain why a ball goes to the ground, it has to start off from the ground. This is an Aristotelian type concept. So you think because it starts off the ground and I have to lift it up, it's then going to go back there because it came from the ground. Is that your argument?
Well, anything will have to come
so because it was on the ground to begin with.
So
because it was on the ground to begin with, that's why it goes back there. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it depends. You might put another board in the way, and it will only go as far as
I'm saying,
the board.
If I didn't pick it up from the ground, would it not go back there?
Say that. If you didn't pick it off the ground, it'd already be back there.
So does it matter where it came from? You seem to be obsessed with where it came. You keep on talking. I had to pick it up from the ground. Why does it matter? Why are you introducing the history of how it got into the middle of my vacuum chamber?
You didn't pluck it out of thin air in the first place, did you?
Sorry?
You obviously didn't pluck it out of thin air in the first place, did you?
Well, it could have. But so you are saying it's dependent on where I got it from?
It's obvious.
Are you saying it's dependent on where I had to pick it up that's causing it to go back down there? Is it because I picked it up from the ground
I didn't
that it
say
got
that.
back there? Well, don't bring it up. Well, then it's irrelevant then. If you don't think that's relevant, then don't.
You had to get your ball from somewhere, didn't you? Right? I'm not sure if you got any.
Yes, well, that's not relevant.
You had to get it from somewhere.
Let's suppose I was to use a transporter. Let's suppose I used to use a Star Trek transporter beam and I beamed it in there. Would that make a difference to how it behaves?
No.
Great. So, in other words, your argument about coming from the ground was completely irrelevant to this argument. So you've just brought in a red herring. So can we not talk about the fact that it's not my argument?
I'm just
saying. It is your argument. You introduced the subject of it being on the ground. So we've now just established that's absolutely irrelevant to its behaviour. So please don't mention it again. So the question is, what is the force that's acting on a ball in a vacuum chamber? And let's suppose I beamed it in with a Star Trek transporter. What is the force that's acting on it that's causing it to go downwards rather than upwards? Because the medium around it is empty. It's a vacuum. So the density above it, the relative density, is equal up and equal down. Why does it go down? There has to be a force.
Because the floor is down. The floor is down.
So it's all dependent on the floor.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
So in other words, you're dispensing with your relative density argument, and it's now where the floor is that's important. Is that right?
Absolutely. You can't have a vacuum chamber without a floor.
You've now changed your argument. So now you've dismissed. It's no longer anything to do with density, and it's now to do with where the floor is.
It's to do with the fact there's no density until hitting the floor, and that's where
no.
The floor is dense.
What caused the object to move towards the floor? And we've established the density above the object and below it is the same. So it can't be the density, can it? It can't be the density. Because the density above the object and below it is the same. So it can't be that.
Will you shut up for 2 seconds?
Causing it to go down. Because it would go sideways, upwards, or downwards. The density in the medium is all the same in all directions. Why is it going down?
There's zero density in the medium. There's density of the ball. The ball has no resistance, so it goes down to the floor.
Why does it go down? There has to be a force. You understand Newton's law sufficiently. There has to be a force to make it go down. And you've said that's not to do it, and you've accepted now that it's nothing to do with density. So there has to be some other explanation as to why something accelerates to the ground.
Density. My argument is it's density the whole time. The ball
you've just accepted
the vacuum
that
has zero density.
Around the object the floor is the same in all
Everything
directions.
has to be built upon a base. Everything.
Yeah, hold on. You've just accepted that the density around the object is the same in all directions. So it cannot be due to density, can it?
Do you build a house from the top down?
No.
Build it
Stop.
on the foundation,
Can you please? Can we just focus on this thought experiment and stop talking about houses? Your argument is that the density, a relative density, is your argument. The relative density of a ball, an object in a vacuum chamber, against the medium which is in all directions, the density. If you want to start giving it, there's somehow direction you're inventing. The direction up has got exactly the same motivation as down, yet you're suddenly starting to talk about the floor. So in your mind, you've clearly got some idea that the floor is important. The downward direction is somehow special, as opposed to the direction of where the density is greatest.
Yep.
And here's a little thing for you to think on. Do you accept
insane, mate? You are insane.
Well, I'm afraid you're having to deal with a little bit of physics here. Do you also understand that the density of air decreases as you go upwards? Do you accept that?
Yeah, there's pressure.
Right.
Gradient, yeah.
So in other words, if I were to hold a ball in the air, the density of the air above the ball is actually less. So why doesn't it go upwards?
Because it would give less resistance, wouldn't it? You don't get more resistance from less. You get more resistance from more density. It has to be more dense. That's why everything sits on the ground. It's more dense.
You again, there has to be a force. You understand, do you? That for something to move, there has to be a force.
Relative to the object, it needs to be more dense to give it buoyancy.
No. We need
You're
a force.
not going to get buoyancy from less density.
No, you've just invented a whole new sort of mechanics.
All your questions are insane, mate.
Newton mechanics relies on a force. So you have to find a force that's causing it to go down and not up. And if you use the relative density argument, then presumably you think things go towards the less density. Is that not what you say? If you say that there's a greater difference between the...
Buoyancy comes from more density. So a helium balloon will go up because the air is more dense than it, so it will give it buoyancy. But if the thing is more dense than the air, it's going to go down until finding a place of sufficient density to give it resistance, which is buoyancy. So, the ball might float in water, for example, because water is dense enough to resist it. If it's a lead ball, it will keep on dropping. As I've already explained.
But your argument, therefore, is it goes towards the area of less density, isn't it? The ball avoids the water because it's denser.
No, it goes to the place of more density. The more dense thing
it doesn't. It goes out. If I put the ball... No, hold on. If I put the balloon in the water where it's nice and dense, it tries to get out of that. It goes to the area of less density, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It goes upwards into the area of less density.
It gets
exactly out of the water and it goes upwards to the area of less density, doesn't it? Yes, it does. It goes to the area of less density, doesn't it? Which means
it goes to the
if I have a balloon in some water, it leaves the dense water and it goes into the less dense air, doesn't it?
Not necessarily. If you actually,
what do you mean not necessarily? When have you heard of a balloon that goes downwards in water instead of going upwards?
Let's use a basketball for this example. I prefer the basketball.
You don't think basketballs float? You don't think they go up from the water? If
you have a basketball in there and you let it go, the air isn't dense enough to give it buoyancy, so it drops. But if you drop it in water, it floats because water is more dense than the basketball. So if you pull the basketball down to the bottom of the swimming pool...
Right, so in other words, it goes towards the area of less density, doesn't it?
Shush, man, let me finish my point. Is if you pull the basketball down to the bottom of the swimming pool, it will shoot forcefully up. So the same gravity that pulled it to the ground in air...
Oh, the same gravity that pulled it to the ground. Excellent. What's this gravity thing you just mentioned?
Well, this is the idea, isn't it? In air, isn't that what pulls it to the ground? Is gravity pulls it to the ground?
You're getting it now. You're getting on the yes. Well done.
But in water, gravity pushes it up.
No, it doesn't.
You
clearly don't understand how buoyancy works. Right? Do you understand? Oh, stop buzzing! Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Brilliant. I don't know what happened there. Sorry, I've just been stunned by...
God, every time I talk, you can't shut up, but then I give you a minute to talk and you can't speak.
Yes, I was overcome by the fact that the buzzing in my ear stopped. Okay. Right, so what was I just about? Damn it, I was about to give you quite an important...
We're talking about buoyancy. The basketball will float in water.
Right, buoyancy. You've clearly never had buoyancy explained to you. Do you understand that the way that buoyancy works is that in the case of something like a helium balloon, the air is denser than the helium balloon. That means it's being pulled. Right, great. So, now I'm about to explain to you how it works. There is a force that pulls on the air molecules downwards. There is helium in the helium balloon that's also pulling the balloon downwards as well. So you've got two forces that are pulling. We've got the air being pulled down and the helium being pulled down. So we have two competing forces. But because the air is denser and the way that gravity works, it accelerates everything the same way, the force of the air being pulled downwards is greater than the force of helium. And so it displaces the helium balloon. So although we we sort of say that
So
gravity is
density
causing
did it.
So you've got, well, no, there has to be a force. If you do this on the vomit comet, or you do
The
it
density
in
of the
space,
air did it. You just described density and buoyancy. Thank you very
no,
much.
no, density is definitely a factor, but it's not the cause of the force. If you remove the gravity, i.e., you do this on the space station, you still got the same density thing argument you made before, but it doesn't go down, does it?
Yeah.
So,
well, that's
so density is clearly not the argument. So, for instance, so density by itself does not cause things to go down because we can remove the force of gravity either in free fall or in space, and the behavior is completely different. So, therefore, density is not the only force, and we've already established that in a vacuum
Have you listened to
chamber,
Craig and I talking earlier? Have you listened to anything we spoke about before when we were talking about
a little bit, yeah.
What's happening in the existence of the vomit comet is not 0G; it is full G. It's not.
Well,
but microgravity.
Right. Okay, yes, that is correct. Both the aeroplane and the density tower are being subjected to G.
And the ISS
what matters is the relative. I mean, when people talk about gravity, I mean, physicist lecturers usually say that gravity is actually the force actually exerted upon your feet. So, for instance, when you are dropped, if you were to drop down, I don't know if you've been in some sort of a ride in which you fall very rapidly, you do not feel any force on your feet. And the reason is your whole body is accelerating at the same rate. And the way you feel forces is the difference between whether your cells are compressed. So when you're standing on the earth, there is a force because you're pushing down on the ground is also pushing up, and it's actually the pushing up force that you feel. If you just fall down, you will feel weightless, although you are. And so even if you were going through a black hole and going through the event horizon, you wouldn't actually notice this because your whole body, there's nothing pushing up from your feet. Every cell in your body is being accelerated at the same rate. So there's no difference between the acceleration of your feet, although there would be eventually in the black hole situation, and your rest of your body. So because your body is accelerating uniformly, there is no differential forces across your body, although you get tidal forces ultimately in black holes.
You got your degree from the School of Waffle, didn't you? Far out you go.
Well, I know you probably perceive science as waffle. You're just
waffling and waffling and waffling.
Well, no, you don't. You obviously
you might as well just as easily say there is no force at all. It's the force of equilibrium. And that's what buoyancy is, the force of equilibrium.
See, what I've done, unfortunately, because you didn't understand what I've said, you understand that as waffle.
No, you're just waffling and waffling and waffling.
When you're confronted with a bit of science, because you don't understand it, you think that's
science,
waffle.
that's waffle.
You see, there we go. You just demonstrate you don't understand.
You can imagine
what I'm
him
saying,
in a lecture at
I can understand that. If I didn't understand something, I couldn't differentiate between waffle
Why don't you just get to the point? What is your
point? The point is that you effectively, in the case of the density tower, because the reference frame, the aeroplane, and the density tower falling at the same time, the things mix. And you were completely wrong when you said that if you left it for some amount of time, that it would differentiate. Because when you actually watch the video, immediately it enters into free fall. It starts to mix. And so if you were to leave it for longer, the actual free fall mode causes the mixing to start. Whereas you seem to have some idea that if you were to leave it there long enough, it would cease to mix. But no, immediately it enters into the free fall, it starts to mix. And that's because
I could be of a misunderstanding. I actually thought that they mixed it up themselves just to show how it would work. But you might be right. And again,
I am completely correct. One thing you ought to know,
the density itself
is I am always correct.
The resistant force because they're all popping at the same rate.
What's this resistant force? What's this resistant? Hold on, you just mentioned a concept here. Could you please explain to me what you mean by the resistant force?
The density. Okay, that's why we have a density tower.
So you're now saying a density
arranges the things according to their density. Now, if we're all dropping them at free fall, everything is falling at the same speed because that is what is happening in free fall. We've proven that everything drops at 9.8 meters per second squared, regardless of its weight, which is determined by the density per volume of mass. So in free fall situation, density does not apply as much as it does as when things come to rest. And when they're at rest, the more dense thing implies the resistant force to the less dense thing.
Resistant force. I've no idea what you mean by the resistance force.
Finally, I got a word in.
You've just mentioned waffle away. You've just made up resistance force as a concept. No one else knows what you mean by that.
That's what a resistance fucking tower is, mate. Jeez,
resistance tower.
It's a density tower, not a resistance tower.
Density tower is another word for it. Resistance tower.
No, it's
Well,
not.
You're the
no
only
one's
person in the
ever
world
called it a
who's
resistance
used that.
tower. You've just made that up.
Yes.
Well, yeah, but you can call it that because
No,
the
you
more
can't.
You call it
density,
wibbly wobbly
the
if you
less
wanted to.
density.
You could call it a wibbly wobbly tower. But no
I'm
one know
going
what
to
you
call
mean.
it Fred, but it doesn't stop it being what it is.
When you use the
Well,
word
that's-
resistance, we talk about
what
a
you can call
resistance
gravity as
force. So if you're going to
Yeah.
talk about resistance, you immediately have to tell me what this force is and where it's coming from.
I did. It's from relative density. Relative density
Well,
gives the resistance.
I mean, you've
relative
already.
density
So that's why a
is
density
force.
tower is a resistance tower.
No.
It's
I've already
literally one and
explained
the
to you
same.
that density is not a force. You even managed to
is.
work out by yourself that density is mass divided by volume. There is no directional element to that. There is no, and we
But
have definitely
relative
got a
density is
direction
when
here.
you combine two different things in the same medium. That's what relative density means. One object, another object. Oil,
Yes, so
water,
there's no-
mix
and
them together.
density-
Why do they separate? Because they're different densities.
And then, in
They
which
both
case,
got
in
the
the
same
vacuum
gravity on them.
chamber, we've got the same density above the object and below it, and yet it always goes down. It never goes up.
That's right.
Whereas
Because
your
you've got
argument,
zero resistance from zero density because a
but
vacuum
what's
is zero
causing the
density.
force to make it go down? You've got to explain where this force comes from and where the direction comes from. And density does not have a direction. Now, if you're taking,
It
if you
does
want
have
to
a
start
direction.
saying-
We've just proven it with a freaking density tower. A density tower
no,
shows
the
there
density
is
tower.
directional
No.
force. according to relative density.
There is a force present.
If you
as
put
is
a
the-
vacuum inside a density tower somehow, I don't know how you do that, but something near to a vacuum, it will rise to the top. That's how it would work. You
Hold on,
inject
first
some
of all-
helium at the bottom, it will rise to the top because it's
Before
less
you
dense.
start getting
Everything
confused
less
by
dense
density
rises to the
towers-
top. Everything more dense sinks to the bottom.
Right, before you get
Universal
confused with
up and
density
down
towers,
due to
we can
density.
the way to explain something and understand something is to simplify it. And we can do the simple case of an object in a vacuum chamber. So we don't have to worry about relative, well, I mean, you might want to try to talk about relative density, but we can see there is a force that's exerted downwards, and you have to explain why that exists when, in your case, if you're going to use a density argument, the medium around the object is the same density above and below it. You've got to explain why it prefers to go down and not up. There is a relative change of density, but it doesn't have a direction. Sorry? What was that?
I think he just had a stroke.
Yeah, I'll give him a second, third
I'm
chance.
trying to get a word in edgewise to this idiot who can't understand that the ball has density, the vacuum has zero density, so zero resistance. So zero
So why
resistance
doesn't it go
makes
up?
the universal downward direction.
Right,
you see,
Why would it? Why would it?
Again,
to go
you've
up,
just
you
introduced
need
this
buoyancy.
universal
You need
downward
buoyancy
direction.
to go
And
up.
as Craig established, that's just another
The
word for gravity.
basketball underwater goes up because it has buoyancy from the water.
Well,
That's
let's
why
not
it
get
goes
confused.
up.
You see, you want
A
to complicate
vacuum
the issue.
is not a swimming pool of water.
To understand
He's admitted
something,
gravity's
you try
real.
and-
All he's done is he's admitted
Zero
gravity's
density,
real constantly
no lots of
because all
density.
he's doing is
Can you
replacing
understand?
gravity
Zero
with
density?
this universal downward. That is gravity. Gravity is what dictates what is down. So when you say there's
If
just
you-
a
you can
universal
call it
down
that,
on
but
Earth,
you can also
you
call
are
it
admitting
Fred.
that gravity is a thing.
Yeah, well,
I
I
mean-
can call it Fred as well. It's still
Yeah,
got
if
the
you want to
same,
call
you know,
gravity Fred, but you've accepted the existence of a force that's independent of your density argument.
Yeah.
Because
Density
Yeah,
is
so
Fred. Gravity
resistance-
can't be Fred as well.
or lack
No,
of
no,
resistance.
if you're going to talk about
You've got
resistance,
resistance.
you've got to
You
start
got
talking about the force.
Resistance, no resistance. Resistance, no resistance. Buoyancy, no buoyancy.
Let's
simple as
try.
that.
Let's try and simplify the argument and just focus on
I just
the.
did. I simplified as much as I could for you. Water
Right,
has
so
density.
you've
You
accepted,
get buoyancy.
and when
A
we
vacuum
do
has
that,
no
every time we get
no
to the simplified
density,
form,
no
you
resistance.
start talking about a universal down, which is an acceptance of the existence of gravity. That's the thing we're focusing on here, because your density argument, as you seem to understand, I think at some sort of level, is not working. If we have the same density above an object and below it, you cannot then say, well, the density is somehow causing it to go down, and then you start using
Yes,
phrases
I can.
like.
Yes, I can. You're just not listening. You're just not listening to the most simple, basic aspect that to have buoyancy, an upward force, you need density. A vacuum is zero density, zero buoyancy. That's why it goes down. That's where the universal up down
do you
comes
accept
from density.
There has to be a force that's making it go down to make it
Yeah.
move. Right, where's
No.
that force coming from?
It doesn't have to have a force to prevent it from
No.
dropping.
The
That's where the force
object
comes
moves downwards. There has to be a force doing that. Where does this force come from if there's no density difference above it and below it?
The ball. The density of the ball.
Yeah, and
I've told you
right.
that
So we got a
about
ball
10
density.
times now.
Okay, great. So we've
10
got a
times now. I said the ball has density. The vacuum has
Great.
zero density.
Excellent.
No resistance. It drops. Universal down.
Why?
Because
What's
no
the
resistance.
force? Because the vacuum is there's as much vacuum above the ball as below it. So why doesn't it go up?
This guy's useless. You're useless. You're just.
But if you're going to use an argument about relative density, the relative density of the vacuum above the ball is exactly the same as the relative density below the ball.
So what?
Sorry?
It's above or below or wherever.
You've got to. We're trying to establish. We're trying to point out to you
from dropping.
that the density has no directional properties, whereas gravity does. So you've got to explain to us why your argument about relative density generates a direction.
Again,
what is it about that scenario that's of density of a vacuum chamber, a universal
times already in a density tower?
No, we're not density tower.
Direction comes from the
stop changing the subject, please.
Each individual object
before you complicate it with a density tower.
Why are you asking me questions if you're not even letting me answer them?
No, because you've changed the subject.
No, I'm not. It's the same thing.
You've changed the subject from the vacuum chamber. Why have you changed the subject? Why have you changed the subject?
Relative to everything else. Where is the ball going to sit in a density tower? Probably on the top, because the liquid that's sitting on is going to make it float. Hold on. But in a vacuum, you've got zero density.
You've changed. So we were discussing what goes on in a vacuum chamber, and then you changed the subject, presumably because you're uncomfortable with discussing what's going on in a vacuum chamber. And every time I point out to you, you've got to justify the direction of falling. And your argument is based. Well, you see, you've got two arguments, but one you want to propose is this relative density. Now, that means that when you talk about relative density, your argument is that the object has got a different density to the medium which it's in. And that's the case in a vacuum chamber. Yet it always goes downwards rather than upwards, which means there must be some other force. Given the fact that density is not a force, you have got to justify the direction of movement.
You keep asking me the same thing. I've just answered you 50 million times, man.
But you haven't. Where's the direction come from?
There's no resistance.
But
where is the resistance in a vacuum? It's at the floor. That's where the resistance is.
But there has to be a force that moves the object, hasn't there?
Yeah, letting the string
right, great. So there has to be a force that makes the object go downwards. Where is that force coming from in your relative density argument?
The density of the ball. The density.
Where's the direction? Right, so why isn't it going upwards?
The density of the ball is more than the density of nothing, so it keeps going down.
Right, so above it, there's nothing.
Greater density until it comes to rest against something of sufficient density to arrest it, which is the floor, the universal up and down direction.
What is the direction?
You build your house from the roof down. No, you don't. Everything is built on the base. The base is at the bottom.
But we can explain why that happens.
You can't. You think the base is upside down in some parts of the world. That's just ridiculous.
No,
the base is always at the bottom in the universal
I'm more than happy to go into that. That if you understood that the gravity vector always points to the center of the sphere, then it's fine. Well, but we can discuss that in a minute. Right, but you've got to justify. You're saying you can explain why the ball in a vacuum chamber will go downwards, even though it's surrounded by the same medium. There is nothing in that, unless you want to start talking about your universal down direction.
You are insane. You are insane.
This is what I'm afraid you're being confronted with a little bit of physics in, a little bit of reality. And you don't like it.
Have you ever watched somebody put a helium balloon into a vacuum chamber and extract the air? Have you ever seen that?
Yes.
Yes, so what happens? The helium no longer has buoyancy, does it? Because there's nothing to give it buoyancy, because a vacuum is zero density, zero buoyancy.
So
correct?
Before let's just examine what would happen. If I had a helium balloon and I held it in the middle of the vacuum chamber, it was on a string or whatever, or just held it in place somehow, and then I removed that constriction, what would happen to that helium balloon?
Are we in a vacuum or not?
You're in a vacuum chamber. Yes. So all this whole conversation at the moment is being in a vacuum chamber. So unless I say otherwise, take the context as being in a vacuum chamber. So I've got a helium balloon in a vacuum chamber. I release the helium balloon by whatever mechanism.
So you're hanging it upside down from a string now. Is that what you're saying? Like the ball?
Upside. Well, I'm just holding. I can hold it. Let's go for the Star Trek.
Once you create a vacuum state, the helium balloon is going to sit on the floor because it's more dense than the nothingness. Nothing gives it buoyancy.
Great.
That's
so
right.
What force because you have to, because it moved from the middle of the vacuum chamber to the ground. There has to be a force, and you seem to understand that. You seem to understand Newton's law: force is equal to mass times acceleration.
Force is buoyancy, and a vacuum is zero buoyancy.
So why doesn't it go upwards?
Density. Because there's nothing to give it buoyancy. It's nothing. The balloon is more dense than
nothing. But there's
nothing.
universal around the object. There's nothing all the way around it. How does the object know which direction to go to if the medium around it is the same
there you go. There
above
you
it
have
and below it?
There you have it. Once you answer that question for yourself, you will understand why we have a universal up and down, why the Earth is flat and
stationary,
so
you just
why
said
everything
it.
finds its place on the base, the physical base.
You've just said it. You've just used the universal up and down, of which you've provided no explanation or relation to density. So you've got these two concepts.
Absolute density. 100% density, 100%. If you've got zero density, you've got no
zero
whatsoever.
density at the top of the vacuum chamber. Why doesn't it go towards that?
Why would it? How is zero giving buoyancy?
Well, you seem to be happy to explain it going downwards.
You are describing gravity, Ross.
This is the most basic thing.
Right. You seem to be happy to explain it going down because there's a vacuum at the bottom, but you don't seem to be happy. But exactly the same circumstances exist at the top of the vacuum chamber. You've got to explain why it prefers going down than up.
Because that's how buoyancy works. It's relative density.
Right. Why does it work that way? Why does it make it go down?
I could sit here all day trying to tell you this, but you are too dense for a single thing to sink in.
But you see,
if
you use your argument about relative density, do you not understand that the same properties exist above the object as below it? So there's no preference for going down.
Right, Ross. Right. So we've got this vacuum chamber, right? We've put this thing in it, and it's fallen to the bottom of the vacuum chamber. Now I pick up that vacuum chamber and I turn it upside down. Why does that thing in the vacuum chamber now change the direction that it wanted to go?
Well, because you've changed the place of resistance, haven't you?
How does the ball know?
The place of resistance is always the more dense thing. That's
but what how does the ball know? There's
buoyancy is an upward force. Buoyancy is an upward force.
There's no difference in density, and how does it know that what is the base has changed?
Because you moved it, it's just going to react to the forces surrounding it.
Nothing changed inside it for pressure or density
extra buoyancy from nothing just because you flipped it upside down. You've just turned the floor into the ceiling into the floor.
How does it know that the floor has become the ceiling?
It doesn't need to know. It just finds where it's going to get the most resistance from, which is always the base. So if you change the base,
so gravity,
the base, then it will go to that base.
Yeah, because of gravity, right?
No, just relative density.
No, not relative density, Ross. Not relative density.
Gravity, you fucking retard! Gravity! Have you ever heard of fucking gravity? Gravity! Gravity!
Real intelligent.
Yeah, well, he's in the chat right now, so that was only fair. But Rumpus, you see. Oh, he left. He left. Desert File made him rage quit. Are you still there, Rumpus? No. Did Zoom die? Rumpus, you there? Am I still live? Did the internet die? I think I'm still live. Am I still live?
We lost him.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Sorry, yes, I had to.
I showed him Desert Files video and it made him rage quit.
You showed him what video?
I showed him Desert Files video and it made him rage quit.
What about gravity?
Yeah, right. The gravity. It literally made him rage quit.
Right. Yes. I mean, he's almost there, isn't he? In some ways, the fact he talked about this universal up and down, and this does other flat issues.
That is gravity.
Well. Yeah, it's just another name for gravity, and he can't see the logic of his argument. That if he's going to make a relative density argument, then he's talking about the object and the medium it's in. And if he's going to say, and I'm still not quite sure what they think their rule is, whether it's more dense, but it goes towards the area. You see, I would have thought their argument was normally it would go to the area of less density, where the density difference is greater. So obviously in the air, that would mean it would go upwards. So if you had a ball so they seem to accept it works. I mean, he did accept putting a balloon or a ball in the water, that it shoots up and goes towards the air, the less dense area. So
but they can't have logic on their side. They can only have whatever is then gives the outcome for their result. It doesn't matter if it makes sense, as long as it gives the result of Earth flat, gravity not real, then it doesn't matter. We just between you and I, we've just spent 2.5 hours explaining to him such basic stuff that my 10-year-old daughter literally understands it. Yet, this is a 50-year-old man that struggles with these most basic concepts. He accepts that Newton's law says that without a force, something's not going to move. Yet then he says that it moves because of density, which isn't a force. And neither is relative density. The difference in density between two things is not a force.
Yeah, it's
insane. Thank you very much for coming on, Rumpus. It's always fun to have you on, mate.
Oh, indeed, it's a pleasure to come on, Craig. Yes, I mean you battle away there, and yes, I feel you need some support sometimes. That was reasonable fun. I had some buoyancy diagrams as well, but I thought it would. I must admit, I've got some quite complicated buoyancy diagrams, and they don't understand this idea that that there are two things being pulled towards the Earth, and therefore one will outcompete the other in effect, and that's. I think that's a concept they don't tend to people that doesn't get explained to them very often, so they just can use the words buoyancy, and if they're not confronted about what actually is going on there, then they can sort of get away. I mean, this is the classic thing. They just use a phrase like resistance or some other phrase they've made up. And they hope that if you're not going to pull it apart,
think he knows what that means.
And this resistance thing, that's right.
He's got this completely out of context.
Yeah, exactly. So he can bring in phrases like resistance, as you say, and if they've got a word like that, they can just throw in, and people like you and I then have to sort of start picking it apart and think, hold on, what did he actually mean by that? And so you've got to sort of dissect every word, every phrase, every argument they use, which you do generally. But you've got to be ruthless about this. Yes, I'd like to have had a bit of preparation there on it to get in, but yes, I've got some excellent diagrams about what buoyancy means, but I get them. But at least he managed.
It would probably be over his head. It would be way over his head.
Yeah, I mean, Sleeping Warrior didn't know how to define density.
You've heard Sleeping Warrior's new dumb, though, right?
Sorry?
Have you heard Sleeping Warrior's new dumb?
No.
Right. So gravity's just a bit of refraction, apparently.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and if pushed. His definition of gravity is it's just an optical phenomenon caused by the flexing of the dome due to convection currents.
That's a goodie. That's quite involved, isn't it?
Yeah, I was quite impressed that he came up with that. This is why I like Riley, because he'd disappear for 9 months, then come back with the most spectacular stupid. Gravity is just a bit of refraction. It's brilliant. And he says that because, you can look at a boat on the horizon and refraction will make it move up and down. Therefore, it's accelerating and moving light, just like gravity can do. Therefore, gravity is refraction.
Even though we can actually measure these things independently of light.
Yeah. Obviously, you can't have two things accomplish the same outcome, can you?
I used to say to George Natiuk on a regular basis that every few months I would believe that they'd reach rock bottom of the explanations, the sort of stupidity they would deploy, and you think they can't get any worse, and then somehow they come up with something even better. I mean, things like pressure doesn't exist, or something like you've just described there. And when you're not constrained by logic or science or physics or maths or anything, your mind can go randomly expand and come up with any sort of fairy tale concept that we would never believe. We wouldn't even go there. Whereas because they're not restrained by any constraints imaginable, they can come up with these amazing concepts every few months. And I keep on telling myself, don't be surprised at the next piece of stupidity, because it will be completely surreal. And every single time I'm surprised again. I keep on hitting myself, don't be, because they're not constrained by logic, science or physics or maths or anything. And therefore their imagination can run riot.
Riker's come on to say hello. Commander Riker.
Oh, that's nice. What's a nice doggy?
Yeah, he's even got his, I don't know if you can see from there, but he's actually got pips on his collar, just like Commander Riker for his being a commander. There we go.
That's very nice. I'm not a great dog fan, but that does seem like a very nice dog. Oh, you got a Rick and Morty t-shirt. Yeah. Okay, you're watching that.
Right, Rumpus. I'm going to shut down the call now. So
right,
I just realised it's 1:45. So I'm going to finish my super chats and go to bed. Thank you very much, my friend, for coming on. You're always welcome on the channel.
Well, thank you very much, Craig. Right. Thank you very much indeed. My pleasure.
Speak to you later, mate. Bye-bye.
Right, bye.
Well, that was fun. Thank you, Desert File, for getting a rage quit out of Ross. Now I know how to get rid of flat earthers. Just play your thing at them. Fred says, when will Riker grow a beard? When he gets a little bit older. There he is. Say hello. This is my beautiful boy, eh? He's my boy. Well, thank you very much, guys. Absolutely fantastically fun stream. Going to be back on Monday debating Brian Turner. Orange Rob, $5 Australian, says, Dome hypothesis violates knowledge of how gases act inside an enclosed system. Yeah, that was far too much sensible words for flat earthers. Please don't do that. Fuck YouTube, $5. I'm making dinner, but fear not, Daniel Pratt won't be dining with me. Make sure you voted in the poll. I will finish it after the super chats. Pat in the chat for $2 says, Wubba lubba dum dum. If you haven't watched season 7, episode 5 of Rick and Morty, it's the best one. No spoilers, but oh my god. Orange Rob for $2 Australian. Who guarded the ice wall before the Antarctic Treaty? It was the Penguins. Always the Penguins. Fuck YouTube, $5. Is debunking Flat Earth doing a dip correction or correcting a dipish? It's both. Tiny Captain's been a member for 1 month and says, Selnav needs the Earth being a globe. On a flat Earth, the horizon would be a blur in the distance. The crisp horizon is an effect of the curve. Yeah. Horizon debunks Flat Earth. Sorry. Jiffy Jiffwell for $5 says, all this incredulity and uneducated waffle coming from someone who genuinely believes tides are caused by the heaving of the bosom of the deep. Sad. And then he gifts me 15 memberships, 16 memberships, because he's awesome. If you became a member today and you didn't buy it, then please say thank you to Jiffy Jiffwold. Mr. Zero has been a member for 2 months, says you can always tell when Flerfs are scared they're being proven wrong and made to look foolish by how much they interrupt the debate and overtalk. Yeah. I get so much flack for, oh, you keep overtalking them, you interrupt too much, blah, 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 blah. No. I copy the Flerfs. That's it. That's it. I copy the Flerfs. Randy Lay for $2 says, he may be joking, but that beard is all business. Yeah, you can't deny the beard game. Jiffy Jiffwell for $2 says, thanks, Bob, that was interesting. Rip. Greg Kotz, member for 3 months, says, Aussie Flerfs. I know. The fact there's Flerfs in the Southern Hemisphere blows my mind. String News 1 for $2 says, you shall not pass high school maths, Ross. Like junior school maths, really. JSS Tiger for $5, 4 minutes per day for 180 days adds up to 720 minutes equals 12 hours. Yes. It's simple, just like Ross. RayCheese0000 has been a member for 4 months. One of my favourite ex-flat earthers. 4 minutes times 182.5 days equals 6 months equals 730 minutes, which equals 0.5 days. Yeah, because Ross is a moron, Rachie gets it. Insider, a member for 5 months, says, Ross, in which direction do you see the centre of rotation of the stars? Questions like that are not fair because they're logical and hurt his brain. Globe Explained, 50 euros. You read that one out. Thank you very much. String News 1 for $2 says, where does the sun go at night in Fantasyland? Well, it goes underneath the disc, in between the elephants that are standing on back of the turtle, and the elephants have to lift their legs to let it through. I think I've got a picture from space that I wasn't supposed to show. Where is it? Here we go. So as you can see, you got the sun and the moon there, and at night time the sun comes underneath the disc, and the elephants have to lift their legs to let it go past. Charles Arnold, been a member for 4 months. Thank you very much. String News 1 for $2. How many hands are on a VCR clock? And then $2. Nothing is denser than a Flerf's mind. Yeah, that's why I get worried about the Flat Earth International Conference. Geekly Gaming 199 says, is he paying for dinner and can I order a steak? No, he's cooking. It's fish and chips and he's making it in his underwear. Tim Davidson for $5. Isn't this the moon was carved out of the Grand Canyon filled with helium guy? Yes. Yes, it was. String News 1 for $2 says, Ross the most dense. He's certainly up there as the densest. String is $1, $2. I just read that. Bill Tetley for $5 says, NASA told me I had to do it due to the unparalleled assault on his neurons. NASA authorization code 1 Romeo 3 Sierra 3 Tango 42069. Ow! What am I talking about using those bloody codes when I'm live, guys? Andreas Eldritch from 56 says, this time of the year and viewed from Australia, does the sun set north or south or north or south of due west? Don't ask him simple questions, they hurt his brain. Connell Silverfer, member for 33 months, says, Craig, almost 3 times around the sun. Just 3 months to go. Thank you for your support. It means the world. Connell Silverfer, $5. Density is such a dumb argument. Which is more dense, a pound of feathers or a pound of bricks? The force of gravity on both is the same. Again, logic. They don't get it. Thor Russman, been a member for 4 months. And Gigi, 81, member for 7 months, says Rumpus rules. Yes, he does. Andreas Eldritch for 56 says, why does a lead ball not sink for a wooden table? Because density is not the answer. Kin, member for 3 months, says, if equal would things hover in his world? And I'm not sure what... Oh, right, I see what you mean. Yeah, things just should just hover if density's the same all around, right? Because, he's a dumbass. J. Bird Max, member from 9 months, says, no wonder I'm always stuck to the side of my house. Simon for £5 says, Craig's wife is hot as fuck. Yes, she absolutely fucking is. Anyone that says that this woman is not the most beautiful woman on the planet is factually wrong. Been married to her for 17 years and I'm still in love. More and more every day. And then Walking Man, member for 3 months, says, I have a chainsaw you can have. Please don't use a spoon. Let's end the poll. So, the poll was, would you rather inject hot magma into your veins, remove your own leg with a spoon, put a needle through your eye, or have dinner with Daniel Pratt? Somehow, nearly a third of you chose dinner with Daniel Pratt, which is worrying. All right, I definitely remove my leg with a spoon rather than have dinner with Daniel Pratt. Thank you very much, guys. It's been a fantastic night. Your support, as always, has been insane. And you know how it goes. We have to ask the important questions at the end of my streams. And what are those important questions? Can we pretend that airplanes in the night sky are like shooting stars?
Can we pretend that airplanes in the night sky are like shooting stars? Should be wishing for a brain right now, brain right now, brain right now.
Good morning, these words come with a storm warning. Better batten down the hatches, grab some matches and brace yourself for a long day of misery. YouTube has given me the power to reach up into the sky and show you all that we live on the ball. I bring you science that's comprehensible. Your view is indefensible. You're reprehensible. No one's too sensible. When I was young, I never thought I would be here to see this. A pile of random nonsense dressed up as bullshit. Your ignorance will be the death of us all, like running head first full speed into a wall. You could always read a book, buy a telescope, set it up and take a photo of the moon, or just be a buffoon. I send you in a balloon up to the stratosphere on page 3.
You're a few fries short of a happy meal. You're dumber than a box of hair. The wheel's spinning but the hamster's dead, and you're as smart as bait. You forgot to pay your brain bill. You're missing a few buttons on the remote control. 24 cents short of a quarter. You're surfing in Nebraska. You're as bright as Alaska in December, and you fell out of your family tree. You don't have all the cornflakes in one box. You got an IQ of 2 and it takes 3 to grunt. The elevator doesn't go all the way up, and there's a vacancy on the top floor. Your antenna doesn't pick up all the channels. You're several nuts short of a fruitcake.
You're Mr. Sensible, calm down, don't go too hard. You don't need the hard burying Flerfs in your backyard. You're a man of science, poise and grace. Mage 2 did everything to wipe the grins off the face. So Nathan, get away from those kids. The world is not flat and it doesn't have a lid. Recognize the differences between the textbook and the Bible and control yourself. Lay off your slander and your lies. You're a bunch of knobs poisoning the well of the youth, spreading lies that you like to claim as knowledge and truth. Stop spreading fresh bullshit like the butter on your bread. Maybe your musical assault knock some sense into your head. I hope one day you'll hear these lyrics and smile, and you realise you used to be a 40-year-old child. Now it's time to wake up, open your eyes and see, and acknowledge the existence hands up.
Gravity!
You're a few clowns short of a circus. Your phone is off the hook. Your sewing machine is out of thread. You're all foam and no beer. You don't have all your dogs on one leash. An intellect rivaled only by garden tools. There's no grain in your silo, and your skylight leaks a little. Your belt doesn't go through all the loops. You couldn't pour water out of a boot without instructions on the heel. Your slinky's kinked, and you're proof that evolution can work in reverse. A few feathers short of a whole duck, one fruit
Can we
loop short of
pretend
a
that
full bowl.
airplanes in the night sky are like shooting stars? Should be wishing for a bring right now, bring right now, bring right now. Can we pretend that airplanes in the night sky are like shooting stars? Should be wishing for a bring right now, bring right now, bring right now.
You thought it was over? Well, I'm still standing while you're swinging, flinging feces, talking shit just like the human centipede. You got the mind of a chimp, and I'm here to expedite your shore leave. Cause I'm a seaman, but not the kind I rinse up from your mum's gums. I'm the kind that sailed submarines and fired guns. I could float a boat across the ocean with my eyes closed, circumnavigate the globe with a compass and a bag of sausage rolls. Well, all you can do is nibble on your toes. I'll smack you with the hose that you taught a water level, sit and swivel. You nasal gazing muppet, you can stuff it harder than the wallet stuffed by Warren Buffett. And I don't care about your sauces unless you're serving them. And I don't care about your lines unless you're curving them. Now step away from me, you're sucking up my oxygen with the vacuum where your brain should be, you dumb fuck. Thank you very much for watching. I love every single one of you, not you, Gary. I say goodnight, Riker says goodnight, and remember that stupidity is not a right. Fight the flat earth. Fight the flat, 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 fight the flat,
I'm a dumb flat earther and I don't understand science.